West here, reporting from Houston, Texas for Climate Desk. Now, one of the biggest uncertainties in climate science right now is the role of clouds. What better way to work that part out than flying right through them? That's what NASA scientists aboard this airplane think. Welcome to NASA's biggest airborne laboratory. You're coming with us today on an 8-hour NASA flight mission.
When you read these big IPCC climate assessments, what's the biggest uncertainty? There's two, right? The role of aerosols and clouds. Clouds is probably bigger than aerosols.
That is a piece of a puzzle that right now we are missing.
You can't get the models right if you don't understand the chemistry and the process.
Now we're being told we've got to get on. The doors are about to shut, so let's go aboard. Every time you turn on the weather, every time you hear a climate change prediction, that information has to come from somewhere. And it starts by getting sucked out of the air from planes like this.
This mission is to particularly try to understand the emissions from the surface, so mostly biogenic emissions, so from trees and other plants.
Right now we're flying to our very first part of this experiment on the DC-8. Over Arkansas, there's a particularly pungent bouquet of emissions that scientists are interested in measuring.
Well, these emissions lead to both aerosols and to molecules that both destroy and create ozone. So these are very important things to understand for climate studies.
How it will manifest itself, it will be in more accurate and more reliable predictions.
So what we're doing is taking a series of flyovers, each at a different level of the atmosphere, scooping up those emissions, testing them, and hopefully scientists are going to see exactly what's in this column of air all the way up.
The data that we collect in one flight can keep busy 60 scientists and students for 3 years, 4 years. We're still studying data from data collected 20 years ago.
In fact, this particular mission today is its most heavily equipped in its nearly 30 years of service. Each one of these consoles here is a specially equipped scientific instrument designed to collect all sorts of different data in real time.
And this instrument here tracks the sun.
We're looking at mist chambers. They're used to strip soluble gases.
This black line is the CO2. It's about 390 ppm right now.
We're putting these filters in the bags that we've got the aerosols that we trapped out of a certain amount of air. And so we're sampling up here about 150 liters a minute.
That ultimately flows back into the operational models. It flows back into what goes on TV every day.
Anyway, I got to get this sample going.
You do it. It's a busy man at work. We can't let him rest. Well, get this. We've just spent 2 hours crisscrossing this one cloud formation. In, back out again, back in again.
Then they grow, and we track them as long as we can, and then we let it go.
Even one cloud can hold a host of answers to the mysteries of climate change.
The patterns of, where the clouds are, what type of clouds we see, what kind of weather systems they're associated with it, that'll all be shifting in a shifting climate, in a world with climate change.
Then the big spark is this, is when we actually get the meat on the grill. And then it will be some time to process it.
In 1920s America, the Great Depression effectively erased consumer demand. Struggling manufacturers needed new ways to get people buying again. Innovative production processes like stamping and use of molds allowed them to use new materials for their designs. Products using vinyl, chrome, aluminium and plywood began appearing. American industrial designers began introducing streamlined, efficient shapes that shouted progress. Bel Geddes pioneered what we now refer to as utilitarian art. Things that had little reason to look sleek, now all of a sudden did. At the 1939 World Fair featuring Bel Geddes' immensely popular Futurama exhibit, a new era of American industrial design proudly claimed to be building the world of tomorrow. Americans found great positivity in these futuristic forms. Yay. Things were looking up. American industrial designers realised that by making objects look great, people simply wanted them more. From cars to kitchen appliances, the most influential society on earth was spending money again. Mass consumption had arrived. Advertisers finally had lots to talk about. Personal taste could be expressed through the things you bought. Style became equally as important as function. Chair designers like Eames and Saarinen didn't just design seating, they created desirable lifestyles. People behind the products suddenly were stars. Everyone wanted to know who they were. Raymond Loewy was one of the shining lights of American industrial design. His face ended up on every coffee table in the nation. Toothpaste packaging promised whiter teeth. Washing powder packaging promised whiter whites. Who knew such simple household objects would shape the tastes and ambitions of an entire society? American industrial design improved America, functionally, culturally and intellectually, and exported it around the globe.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful?
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand and they don't get it and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense of what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all of the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university? And,
yeah, people like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
Welcome show. It is Thursday, May 29th, 2014. I am filling in for the big man. Glad to be here per usual. I want to thank you for tuning in. If you're watching us live on Free Speech TV or TawkrTV, you can see my new hoodie that I just bought. It's a little rainy outside today, Peter. Free Speech is seen on DirecTV and Dish, and Talker is on youtube.com/TawkrTV. We're always tweeting at BP Show, and you can call us here at the program, 866-55-PRESS, 866-55-77377. The voice you heard first is that of Peter Ogburn, executive producer of this show. To my right, how are you, Peter?
Good. How you doing, man?
Doing all right. Looking little...
All right, look. Let's get this out of the way. Let's get this out of the way right now.
Okay.
All right. So I didn't sleep much the night before last. Okay.
Right.
So I went to bed crazy early last night.
Okay.
I woke up this morning and I could not open my left eye. My good eye.
Oh, no.
That's my good eye. I don't know if you knew that. That's my good eye.
I was not aware of that fact.
So it's closed up, it's seized up, and I go and look at the mirror, and I got that Bob Costas eye.
It's very Olympics Bob Costas.
It's swole. It's an issue.
Right. So that's that. For those of you who don't know that, so he's dealing with that. Of course, Lisa Murphy is running the board.
Hey, good morning. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. And Alicia Cruz is screening your phone calls. And of course, Cyprian Bolding is the one who will be showing us your crazy looking eye
already
today.
had a little talk with Cyprian.
Zoom in on that
I
one.
told Cyprian we had a little talk. Keep the camera back a little bit.
Would you like some sunglasses?
Put a little Vaseline on the lens, right? A little mood lighting on me.
Right. Well, we obviously have a big show today, but before we get to all this stuff, I want to talk about something. I did something I, as a DC native, have never done before in 33 years of my life. I visited the top of the Washington Monument. Now,
oh, cool.
For those of you who, don't necessarily follow monument news, obviously they were under repairs because there was the earthquake a couple years ago. And they put the scaffolding up, they put the lighting up, and every time they put the scaffolding up, people say, keep the scaffolding. Oh, yeah. I prefer it to look lit with the scaffolding. I am one of those people anyway. So I decided, look, I'm going to go to the top. They reopened it. I don't really care about these elevator problems. And I'll say this about the Washington Monument. It is vastly overrated as an experience.
No way.
Now, we got tickets. It was fine. You wait in line. It's kind of a free-for-all, the line situation. Yeah. There's a lot of security theater to get in. You wait till you get to the top. And as someone with a marginal fear of heights, it's fine. You go up, it takes 70 seconds. They tell you, oh, man, it's so quick. You get up there, and there's sort of marginal information. Sure, you can see from all sides, but you can't. The cool thing about it is that if you're scared of heights, you can't really see down, so that helps. So
you
can just see out.
Okay.
But it only tells you what the government buildings are. And so I thought to myself while I was up there, if you're a tourist, none of this stuff means anything to you.
Right.
If you live in the area, you can just look out and say, oh, hey, that's where that is. That's where I go. I at least can identify it. Exactly. Right. You have some level of relatability to what you're looking at. But here's the deal. When you go back down is when the show really starts. Oh. Because the elevator on the way back down stops and starts. It moves at different speeds and the lights go out at certain points. So you can see out of the elevator into the interior of the monument where they show you various stones that have been donated during the course of the building. It is frightening. I'm telling you, it is like a roller coaster ride involving a light show. And because of the way that it's aligned, you can see far further down the tower than you can when you go up or when you look out. So it is, I'm telling, how
has nobody mentioned that?
I was freaking out because it's like, boom, quick drop, slow down. Look at these creepy stones. Boom, quick drop, slow down. And it's like, and listen, the only way to know that you're not in free fall is by staring at the ranger to make sure that person isn't going nuts, because otherwise you would have no idea. There's no way to know. You're just sort of there. Anyway, it would look. Can
you take the stairs?
It's worth doing. The stairs might be scarier for all not. And again, for all those people who got caught up in the elevator, they had to take the stairs, so that's a little different. But it's worth doing, worth seeing. It's not exactly the most educational situation on earth, but there is a definite scare factor.
I don't like that at all.
I'm telling you, man. Just thinking about it,
I was like, I know, like lines of free for all. I can probably deal with that. And I can deal with some of this. When you start talking about dropping and stopping and starting and
I'm telling you, Peter,
down.
it was frightening. All right, so we got a big show today, but first,
this is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. You know the Duggar family, Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar. They have 19 kids.
And counting.
And counting is the name of their show. Well, they aren't kidding. They actually are counting. They are looking into having child number 20. In fact, they went to a fertility doctor.
How is this legal?
Wow.
I agree with you. She is 47 years old. He is 48. She was previously pregnant with number 20, but lost the child, and so now they are seeking guidance from a fertility doctor. She has previously said, we want to put this in God's hands. Apparently they want to take it out of God's hands.
Well, hold on.
God has spoken.
What does that even mean? If you're going to a fertility doctor, how is it in God's hands?
Take it out of God's hands.
Oh, my
goodness.
This
is going to a fertility doctor in defiance of God's will.
Right. If you're going to entertain that ridiculous notion to begin with about why people should be having kids, it still doesn't make sense.
Yeah, there you go.
Wow.
From the sports desk last night, the Indiana Pacers had their backs against the wall. Miami Heat just needing one win to close out their series. And the Pacers, more specifically, Paul George, answered that call. 93-90 is the final score. Pacers put that game away. Paul George scoring 37 points, 21 of them in the fourth quarter. A huge game. LeBron James, a non-factor. You were saying he got into foul trouble.
Yeah.
He only played 24 minutes last night, scored 7 points.
Unbelievable. Yeah, he was doing a lot of cheerleading, but as they used to say when I was in high school, Paul George beasted out. He was unstoppable. I mean, the guy simply took over the game, and there was nothing the Heat had to answer him. And you know what? Hey, the Pacers were home. They needed it. He showed up.
They made it exciting.
Absolutely.
It wasn't going to be a total blowout.
I thought they were going to get crushed.
I did too.
Yeah.
I did too. And Google has unveiled their self-driving car. It is a car without a steering wheel and without pedals, which... Come on,
you don't like this?
I'm a little scared.
Really?
I'm on board with the whole driverless car.
Sign me up. If I can get in a car and I don't have to talk to a cabbie,
I'm with you.
I don't have to do anything. I can just cruise on my way. I can sleep if I want.
I'll put it this way: I don't want to be the first one.
Right.
Fair enough. I'm on board,
right?
But I don't want to be the first.
And
one.
by the way, I don't have a problem with talking to cabbies. It's just sometimes when you're trying to get work done and you got to get from point A to point B, it can be difficult because you're slowing up. And listen, I got no problem with personal relations. However, there are times when you need to be alone and you need to get somewhere quickly.
Google's plan for using these, by the way, is not that different from, say, Uber, where you have an app. You call up the car, it shows up, it picks you up.
Oh, now that
is
weird.
You program in where you want to go on the map
and
picks send it
you
to the car.
up?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh.
Right?
Wow, that's like
again.
Wow. That's
cool
a
little
spooky.
I'm on board.
Right.
I don't want to be the first.
Wow, man.
Let somebody else blaze that trail.
Okay. Man. Thank you very much. So, of course, obviously around the rest of the country, we had some very big news last night. One, Brian Williams interviewed Edward Snowden. All of you know who Edward Snowden is at this point. If you're listening to this show and you don't, where have you been? It was the first real time that he sat down and had an extended conversation with anybody from the American media, and quite frankly, it was fascinating. I think you're looking at a guy in Snowden who, at 30 years old, has how do I say this, come into his own a little bit. You can tell in the way that he presents himself that he is not just rehearsed, but he's a guy that's just more confident in not only what he believes, but how he says it. A lot of these clips from this interview were really fascinating. Peter, what did you think?
I think it was a very necessary look into where he's been, why he did what he did. I think that there were a lot of questions that were answered last night. And part of the problem with the whole Ed Snowden scenario here is that he hasn't been able to speak for himself.
Yeah.
He has been painted as so many different things: a Russian spy, a low-level analyst, an anarchist. He's been painted as all these things, and yet we never heard from him until last night.
The very imagery of it alone was kind of shocking because you were used to seeing him either in that one shot we saw with the mirrored reflection, something that Brian Williams actually got to in the TV piece, which I thought was good. You're used to seeing him either as some disembodied voice on a screen in front of a teleconference, kind of weird scenario, but to see his actual sort of human form, I think in itself presented a sort of a different thing that kind of changed his message. Let's get to a couple of things he said. He talked about what happened in regards to the NSA, and he said that, frankly, it's a violation on a very large scale.
The reality is the situation determined that this needed to be told to the public. You know, the Constitution of the United States has been violated on a massive scale. Now, had that not happened, had the government not gone too far and overreached, we wouldn't be in a situation where whistleblowers were necessary.
And let's get to the crux of the argument. I mean, that's really what this is really about. Do you care more about what Edward Snowden believes and did, or do you care more about the overall sanctity of the Constitution and what it stands for?
And yeah, exactly. And so much of this conversation has been built up around why he did what he did. And, you know, Glenn Greenwald and the people that got the story out there said he cares about his country. He wanted to see this get out because he does love his country, and he thinks that they've gone too far.
Yeah.
You've had the Obama administration painting him out to be a traitor. You've had other groups painting him out to be a spy, like I mentioned.
Yeah.
And so for him to just sort of bottom line it for us and say, you know, I'm proud of my country.
However,
we need to talk.
Right. No, it's a fair point. And, you know, he's been exiled in Russia, and a lot of people think that fact alone is an indication that he doesn't particularly care about the United States. That's kind of a different discussion because he didn't necessarily want to be there. He talked about the fact that he didn't just walk away because it was something he wanted to do.
Now, whether amnesty or clemency ever becomes a possibility is not for me to say. That's a debate for the public and the government to decide. But if I could go anywhere in the world, that place would be home.
Now, where is home? Home is around here, actually. Last place he lived was in Maryland. It'd be a very, very interesting thing. Look, again, it's hard. He's said a lot of different things over the years that have made it difficult to sort of unilaterally like him over the months, rather. But
agreed.
Again, he makes a decent point, and he's drawing the ire of certain people, particularly John Kerry, who made this point about him, sounding like he was about to go nuts.
What he's done is hurt his country. What he's done is expose for terrorists a lot of mechanisms which now affect operational security of those terrorists and make it harder for the United States to break up plots, harder to protect our nation.
Do you agree with that?
You know, the Obama administration themselves kind of came out and said, okay, look, we realize that this whole NSA spying thing might be a little too far.
Yeah.
Okay, like they are putting into place some overhaul on the system that they're using. And so that came directly from Edward Snowden.
Absolutely. Undeniably.
They didn't wake up and say, you know what we're doing is wrong.
Right.
They felt the fire. They felt the heat of Ed Snowden putting this out there. And so for John Kerry to continue to defend that program, which they have now recognized that they need to change, is disingenuous.
Absolutely. That's, you know.
At best.
Right, at best.
At
right.
best.
So, you know what? That's the question we're asking today. 866-55-PRESS. 866-557-7377. Is John Kerry out of line? You know, has the administration lost control of this? And if you saw that interview yesterday, and even if you didn't, do you look at Snowden as a heel or a hero at this point? I think he really humanized himself with that interview yesterday. And I think what you mentioned about John Kerry, you know, being so sort of boisterous about his defense of the program has really changed a lot of people's minds on it. And on some level, it's actually changed mine. 866-55-PRESS, 866-55-77377. My name is Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist at The Washington Post. I'm filling in for Bill Press. It's Thursday. Talk to you soon.
This is the Bill Press Show.
You make it sound very easy to take these 90-degree turns in your career. You went from engineering to law. But there's an awful lot of people at that age who feel they're on a track, they've invested time in learning a career, and they need to see it through to the end, or maybe their parents are pushing them to stay in one route. What is your advice for a young person?
Stay away from your parents.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
My mom is a pretty spectacular human being. We essentially came to the United States as refugees. And that is when I really got to understand who my mom was as a person. Being a refugee in a foreign country, you would think that it would affect you so much. It was like my mom, nothing changed for my mom. What was really at her core and her center was always being with her kids and getting to spend time with them and making sure that they were okay and making sure that they could still go out and play soccer. I knew that if my goal was to go to Liberia and to work on economic justice so that, kids could go to school and have access to a doctor if they have malaria, that if I bet on their moms, we win.
I think I just come from a lineage of kick-ass women is all I can say. My grandmother came to this country from Mexico as a single mom with 5 children. And I, have an amazing mother who had 3 children, was going to school, working full time. I mean, almost my story, but she did that and got her bachelor's degree at 40. And so I had a great role model. When I came home and told my mom I was pregnant, her response to me wasn't, your life is over. Her response to me is, well, I want a plan. You need to, let me know what you're gonna do about this because you're now responsible for somebody else.
I was the first one in my family to go to college, and my parents were very proud of it. They both had to work. My mom in a factory and my dad in the supermarket, and I was their success story. However, on graduation day, they said, are you going to be a doctor? Are you going to be an engineer? You're going to be a businessman? What are you going to, a lawyer? I said, I'm going to join the Peace Corps. And they said, what? My parents were very much opposed to this, and it was very difficult.
How much pressure did they put on you?
Tremendous pressure. Up until we were leaving from O'Hare Airport for me to go to Peru, my mother questioning me, like, where is Peru? You've never been out of the country. What do you know? Do they have doctors? Do they speak English there? What are you going to eat? You like my cooking? I said, Mom, I'm going to be a pioneer. Why do you always have to be the pioneer? Let them do it. Let them come back, and then you go. I said, no, I want to be the first to go.
I grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood, so there was a lot of gang activity. And one of my friends actually was murdered on a basketball court when a 15-year-old child shot him in the back of the head. And I was just hopeless. And my mom actually, she brought me to a place of empathy for the kids who were involved in actually murdering him. Because my mom sort of said, look, where do you think those kids are coming from? And then she said, so if you're angry about it, do something. Actually change the way this world works.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
And I am Clinton Yates, a columnist for the Washington Post, filling in for Bill today. Thank you all for joining us. We're talking about Ed Snowden in his interview last night on NBC. He covered a lot of different things. 866-55-PRESS, 866-55-77377. Do you think John Kerry's comments were out of line? Has the administration lost control of not only the situation regarding the NSA, but also the story? And is Edward Snowden a hero or a heel to you at this point? That's the question. 866-55-PRESS. Let's go to Jesse in Miami, Florida. What's up, dude?
Hey, how you doing? Good morning to all. Hey, Kerry, I think he's an ex-Vietnam veteran, and he threw his medals away and all of that. But now he's a one percenter, and I think he represents that kind of policy, the military-industrial complex and the chambers of commerce. Mr. Snowden, he represents the 99%. I can't see anybody doing wrong by hollering fire when there is a fire. So that's pretty much what he's doing, exposing the 1% policy. And he needs to pretty much frame it like that, because if everybody focus on democracy, torture, stuff like that, and they don't see the bigger picture of, the big brother really spying for economics, it's really not about terrorism at all.
Thank you very much. That's a great call. Yeah, I mean, that is a very important point here. Like, let's just say Snowden didn't really exist and you just found this information. What would you think about it? If you can eliminate the messenger on some level, what would you think about the message? Actually, that was a very, very enlightening thing. I mean, and you think about John Kerry and who he is, you always sort of look at veterans and you always sort of think of them as the everyman. But Kerry's not that guy. Right. You know what I mean? There's, he's windsurfing in Montauk or wherever that one picture is.
His wife owns ketchup.
Right. And so that's a good point. I liked what he said about that. But, John Kerry, we talked about this a little bit before the show. You didn't like the way that he presented himself at all. You thought he was going way too hard on this.
Look, the White House knew that this Snowden thing was coming out last night, so they tried to get ahead of it.
Yeah,
and they put John Kerry out there yesterday in a very aggressive, name calling, sort of like trying to pick a fight almost with Ed Snowden.
Yeah, listen, we've got audio of what Kerry said yesterday about patriots. Let's hear that.
Patriots don't go to Russia. They don't seek asylum in Cuba. They don't seek asylum in Venezuela. They fight their cause here. There are many a patriot. You can go back to the Pentagon Papers with Dan Ellsberg and others who stood and went to the court system of America and made their case. Edward Snowden is a coward. He is a traitor, and he has betrayed his country. And if he wants to come home tomorrow to face the music, he can do so.
Here's my argument to that, right?
Right.
He's right. Fight your fights and stand up for what you believe in. But if you're not going to get a fair fight, find a place where you can get a fair fight.
Absolutely. Makes sense. Look, I'm going to say this. This notion that we are obsessed with in this country, that in order to be able to make your point, you have to somehow subject yourself to some level of punishment is ridiculous. Okay? The bottom line is that if what this guy is talking about makes sense, he needs to be heard clearly. He's not a coward. He actually put himself at major risk here in order to make a larger point. I don't understand how you can use that word in any sensible context at all, especially not if you're John Kerry in the position that you are.
Right.
Oh, man, there's going to be a lot more to talk about this, obviously, today. But, Ed Snowden, he did something that I think a lot of people wouldn't necessarily do. I'm Clinton Yates. This is The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I talk to undergraduates and graduate students who are desperate to go out and start something and build something and be the one to come up with that silver bullet solution. And I just want to say, slow down.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
Most of the people you're talking to who want to come into the social change space, are they prepared?
If you're early in your career, there's a couple of really important things to do. The first one is just to shut the hell up and don't talk for about 5 years and work really, really hard. The only way you're going to be given more difficult things to do is by solving the ones you're already given. And if you're somebody who's always complaining or wants to be promoted above where they really are, you can't learn enough to start to take on a greater pool of responsibilities.
Advice you would give a person coming out of college is go work for other people, make your mistakes on their dime.
That sounds like me, absolutely.
It does sound like you.
And you know who that came from is one of my board members, Eric Buttline. Eric had seen me start a few companies as a young kid. I mean, I started my first real company when I was 16. And Eric said, "Chid, do me a favor. I know you have this thing in your head that you think you're this great entrepreneur, but like go work for somebody for a little while and just learn how things are supposed to be done. And when you're done with that, let's have another conversation about, you know, your next venture."
And I think another thing to remember, and this is something that I've really only learned in the past couple of years, is that although the problems are urgent and so important for us to address, I need to have more patience. I'm not going to solve those problems on my own. You're not going to solve those problems on your own. I'm an apprentice in all of this. You know, I'm an apprentice in life. I'm an apprentice in problem solving. I'm not going to change the world until I'm at least 65. That's my goal at this point.
California, or the Golden State, has been in the midst of a 3-year drought, and this year, some scientists predict could be the driest in 500 years. Governor Jerry Brown declared a state of emergency in January and in February of this year. The world's 10th largest economy, California is also the United States' top agricultural producer. Half of all our fruits and vegetables come from California. The Golden State is not the only place on the planet struggling for this vital resource. In December 2013, the World Resources Institute found that 37 countries face severe water shortages. Free Speech TV would love to know what you think about this fight for water, especially if you're from the Golden State. Please call our comment line at 1-888-378-8855 or email us at comments@freespeech.org. to let us know your thoughts.
Tune into the Thom Hartmann Program, a live broadcast featuring the nation's #1 progressive talk show host. Phones open at 3 p.m. Eastern, only on Free Speech TV.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the program. I am Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist for the Washington Post. Pete Ogburn is to my right. What's going on, Peter?
Hey.
Talking about Edward Snowden, he was on with Brian Williams on NBC last night. We're asking questions. Call in 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. Were John Kerry's comments out of line, calling him a traitor and a coward? You know, has the administration lost control of what's really happening here, from the story to the situation? And is Snowden a hero or a heel to you at this point? Did he change your mind any at all? 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. Pam in Chicago, how are you this morning?
Good morning. I'm well.
Your thoughts?
I can't say if he's a heel or a hero. I don't feel that he's a hero, Snowden, or a heel. However, I do believe that John Kerry, and don't you all believe that he may be privy to information that we don't have, that is really likely that Snowden's release of this information has put some people in harm's way. I mean, that's a logical thought. Now, if we think that that is an acceptable risk, then that's, another thing. But I think Kerry's point of view, for me, is well taken. Now, is he over the top with a coward and traitor? Perhaps, but I think Snowden has hurt the U.S.
Pam, I think that's a good point. It's one worth exploring of whether or not we've put people in harm's way by exposing this. But there's the bigger question, I think, of at what cost do we try and protect everybody and everything, and at what point are we giving up some of our freedoms to be safe?
Understand that, and then my last point is this, and I really don't know Snowden's motives. I mean, has that been talked about or assessed? Really don't know. I know he's given up a lot personally and financially, but we really don't know his motives.
Well, okay, I'll address that. And thank you very much for the call, Pam. 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377 if you want to get in on it. He said his motives, which is that there's been a violation of the Constitution, in his opinion, and he was in a position to try to shed some light on that. I think his motives are pretty clear. He thinks that the NSA was overreaching, and he knows that because he was part of that system. To say that he's sort of just trying to get a name for himself, I think at this stage, after he was willing to talk about it very specifically, is a little bit unfair to his argument. But if it's difficult to understand, it's difficult to understand. Let's talk about what he actually said about, why he did this.
I think it's important to remember that people don't set their lives on fire. They don't say goodbye to their families, actually pack up without saying goodbye to their families. They don't walk away from their extraordinarily comfortable lives. I mean, I made a lot of money for a guy with no high school diploma. And burn down everything they love for no reason.
And that's an interesting point. He says, look, I beat the odds to get to the point that I did, as far as the American dream or what have you. Clearly, he threw a lot away. I think his motive is clear at this point. And whether or not you agree with that is a separate matter from whether or not he actually has a purpose in here.
He gave up a life here. He gave up a lot of freedoms.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean...
Absolutely. I mean, he
gave up a girl. He had a girlfriend here. He left.
Yeah. No.
He had to.
866-55-PRESS. Martin in Baltimore. What's up?
I think that John Kerry's his assessment, or during the interview, he was a bit harsh. He was a bit brutal. And if I were in Snowden's shoes, I'd be frightened to death to come back to the United States and face what looks like will be just a harsh and brutal trial or whatever the political ramifications the legal ramifications would be.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to call him a hero because he fled the country, and it looks as though he went to one of our biggest adversaries with a lot of information. It's hard for me to call him a traitor because he did have some information that the American people should be aware of.
I would agree with that. I mean, it's somewhere in between, more likely.
I have that same conflict. I do. Like, I view him probably more as a hero than a traitor. But I understand the conflict. I know why it's there. I understand why it exists. But, Martin, what you mentioned is sort of what Kerry mentioned of, if this is something that you believe in, why not go to court? Why not face the music? Why not try and prove your point? We saw how that played out for Bradley Manning.
Yeah.
Or, excuse me, Chelsea Manning.
Yeah.
We saw how that played out. It didn't play out very well.
So there's a fundamental flaw there,
Yeah.
which indicates why he didn't do that. And getting back to Kerry's point, again, he is the Secretary of State. To be standing and screaming like this at people is unbecoming of the position in some people's minds. That's just really what it comes down to. Ben in Chicago, how are you?
Good, thank you, guys. I totally and completely agree with John Kerry. I think Snowden is nothing but a traitor. He may believe in his own mind that he did the right thing, but I vehemently just disagree with the way he did it.
Why is this discussion so much about Snowden versus the NSA to you?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Why is this discussion so much more about Snowden than it is about the NSA to you?
Because after 9/11, if you think back, everyone was looking back at all of these clues that weren't pieced together. Why didn't anybody pick up on these guys taking pilot lessons and they weren't learning how to land? Why didn't these pieces get connected? Well, they figured out how to connect those pieces, I believe. The NSA figured, hey, this is the best way to do it. This is the best thing we have. And so they went with it. And that's why I believe it's It's what we have. It's the only way we have to keep another attack from happening. We have.
All right, thank you very much, Ben. Ben has a lot of faith in the government that I'm not sure that everybody does.
Putting a camera inside every home in America would probably cut down on a lot of crime.
Right.
And probably solve a lot of crime.
Right, but that's what we like to call totalitarianism.
Yeah, I'm not okay with that either.
That's not what's up. Jim in Las Vegas, how you doing this morning?
Yeah, okay. I think he's a hero, and I didn't see the show tonight, but John Kerry, I saw what he had to say. But just what you had just brought up about Bradley Manning, you can't be a whistleblower. Obama said before he got elected that he was going to have open government, and whistleblowers would have been appreciated. And Bradley Manning is still in prison. So I think he had no choice. He realized the Constitution was being ruined, and he had no other choice.
Thank you very much. And I'd just like to say, again, like you corrected yourself earlier, Peter, Chelsea Manning, that's how she's looking to be identified now. So if you
that was my bad earlier.
And callers, if you're going to refer to her, please call her Chelsea. 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. Talking about Edward Snowden. Ronnie in New Haven, how are you this morning?
Good. First of all, John Kerry is a very, very naive individual. That's all I want to say about it. I don't want to get into it, but he's very naive.
Short and to the point.
Snowden is... an American citizen does not give up our security. That is not a hero. A hero is somebody that gives the ultimate sacrifice or helps people. They do not take advantage of something that they're sworn not to do and then turn over to people that, could harm us. He's not a hero.
Okay, thank you, Ronnie.
People today.
Appreciate it, Ronnie. I mean, again, I think we'd have a tendency to sort of put everything into sort of very stratified binary codes. Maybe hero and heel is a bit much, but you ask that question because you want to know what people actually believe. But I don't necessarily know that I agree that only heroes are people that make the ultimate sacrifice. I think that speaks into, again, this sort of over extremism where you gotta die in order for your cause to make any sense. That to me I don't understand that. Sarah in Arcata, California, how are you?
Oh, just fine. I wanted to just say that I believe that Snowden put many lives in jeopardy. I heard a caller who announced that very fact. And my uncle was part of the CIA for a while. And when the Ellsberg papers were put forward, he lost his job right away because his cover was blown. Many other agents who'd been trained in the field lost their jobs. And we lost a lot of security that way. And I think this same thing happened this time, but I can't be sure.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And that last statement was the point there. We can't really be sure. There is no direct necessary connection. Again, I don't think that you have to be agreeing with everything Snowden says to have doubts about whether or not what he did actually created more security problems in this country. How are we to know?
Yeah. And I also, when we talk about putting lives at risk, I think that Snowden and Greenwald and the way that they put it out, they were very careful about it.
Yeah,
they were very methodical about it, which fit their best interest. But
Absolutely.
I also think that they were responsible about it.
Yeah.
And Greenwald even said, they had stuff that they didn't put out because they thought that it was going to put some lives at risk.
Right. They didn't just roll by and paper everybody. Exactly. 866-55-PRESS. Victor in Gettysburg. I was just there 2 weeks ago. How are you?
Cool. Good. Thank you. My point is, are they going to prosecute all these whistleblowers at the veterans hospitals just because 40 veterans didn't get their appointments in time?
We don't know.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, if you're a whistleblower, you're a whistleblower. You're a whistleblower.
Right.
In this situation to that situation, be it the VA or be it the NSA.
Whatever it may be. Should it be any different? We don't know. You know what? And when we get back, we're actually going to talk a little more about this with George Zornick of The Nation. I'm Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist for The Washington Post. This is The Bill Press Show. We'll be right back.
This is The Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I'm the retired bishop with the Episcopal Church as the bishop for all chaplains in federal service. I read that there was a group of people that represented a sense of injustice that I had. We'd lost Zuccotti. I mean, there was a kind of a hope that maybe Trinity Church would be gracious and give refuge. We picked this day where we would gather and demonstrate that Trinity was closing its ears to what was happening. We marched around the block, and I realized that, my goodness, they're carrying a ladder. And I thought, well, this is the moment. You could feel a spiritual presence. You could feel a certain something. And then the cops came in. It got brutal.
Yeah, I'm with you right here. Robin, I'm here.
The church needed, in this moment in history, to stand alongside of these protesters. The truth of Christ is found in the pews, is found in the institutional church, but it is also found in the streets. It's found in the honesty and the integrity, the insistence of people that you find in Occupy Wall Street.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the program. You're listening to the Bill Press Show. My name is Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist at the Washington Post. I want to thank you all for joining us. On the line, we've got George Zornick of The Nation. He is the Washington editor. How are you, sir?
Great, Clinton. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, we've been talking about Ed Snowden and his interview on NBC pretty much all morning so far. Just want to get your initial thoughts on that.
I thought it went remarkably well, actually. I thought it was better than I expected. I was both nervous that Brian Williams would not do a particularly good job, that the questions either wouldn't be tough enough or would be too simple or not really in touch with what is happening, and I thought he did a good job. And I thought Snowden was pretty articulate. I think he gave an interview that if you don't like him, you really got riled up about it. And if you liked him, you were really sort of rallied to his side. But even if you were watching on Twitter last night, it was really, as with everything Snowden, it was really love-hate. People were really just going crazy, or they were really impressed with what he did.
Yeah, one of the components of this story obviously has been Secretary of State John Kerry, who has been very loud, very vociferous about his stance on Snowden. You know, how do you think his behavior affects this story and affects sort of the way the administration comes at this from more than just a PR standpoint?
You know, I think the more that he gives interviews like that, where people actually hear from him directly, which people really haven't yet, if people are receptive to it, and it's hard to gauge, 12 hours after the fact how people will really take it, but if people see him in a more sort of understanding light, if they see him in a little bit more of a human light, I think it makes it tougher for them to make a tough line. I mean, he made it pretty clear last night that he is frustrated with the fact that he, blew the whistle on what he sees as kind of overbearing surveillance, and then ended up in a country with much worse surveillance. And of course, the problem is that he can't get back here. He doesn't have a passport, and if he does, he faces some pretty serious prosecution. So what I think both sides, and what we've heard both sides sort of are kind of flirting with, is some sort of negotiated settlement, some sort of way that he can accept punishment for what he admits was indeed breaking the law, and have some kind of sort of penance without spending his whole life in jail should he return to the United States. And he made that pretty clear last night, that this is where he would want to be, is back in the U.S.
Yeah, I think you hit on a good point there about how, it has been months and months and months of us hearing about who Edward Snowden is from everybody but Edward Snowden. So when he finally got a chance to speak last night, I thought that was refreshing. So who is he, and how is he going to respond to John Kerry, who calls him a coward and says he wants him to come back and face the music? What's his next step?
I think it's to just keep doing things like this. I mean, he obviously can't come back right away. If he did, he would face almost certainly a lifetime in federal prison. The way that he would be prosecuted under the Espionage Act would not allow him to make a case that my leaks, were a public service. They were whistleblowing. There is no room for that in the letter of the law of the Espionage Act. The judge would say, fine, that's great, but you still broke the law, and here's 40 years in jail. So I think at some point if he's to come back, and maybe he never will, he needs some kind of negotiated settlement where the U.S. just says, okay, you broke the law, but we understand this and that, and here's your penalty, and he probably will do some time in prison, but it seems that he would prefer that over a lifetime in Russia.
We're talking with George Zornick, Washington editor at The Nation. You can follow him on Twitter at @GZornick. We're going to switch gears here a little bit. The headline says, politicizing the VA isn't the answer to scandal. Explain that to me a bit. Yeah, so there's this little drama that played out on the Senate floor last night, or last week rather, where the House passed this bill that said, okay, when the IG report comes out, Shinseki, or at this rate, whoever is in charge of the VA by that time, should be able to fire his or her top administrative staff, hospital administrators, and these are people who are at the top level of civilian employees. Of course, these people are very difficult to under actions and all that. So Marco Rubio was pushing this bill in the Senate, said, look, we want unanimous consent to just pass this. You should be able to fire these people. And Bernie Sanders stood up and said, well, that's a good idea. There should be accountability. But the problem here is that if you do this, that means that all these hospital administrators, after this scandal passes, and when there's a new president, say there's a President Cruz or a President Rubio, they can come in and fire basically the entire top level of the VA and replace them with political appointees. So it was this little back and forth that really kind of made Democrats look bad at first blush. The headlines were that they blocked this Accountability Act, but there were some valid concerns raised, and now we've seen it, since Sanders blocked it, go to the committee process and kind of try to be hashed out in a little more of a nuanced way. Gotcha. Thank you, George. Yeah, thanks. Much appreciated. That was George Zornick, Washington editor at The Nation. Again, you can follow him on Twitter at @GZornick, and you can check out his stuff online at thenation.com. We'll be back. I'm Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist at The Washington Post. This is The Bill Press Show. Talk to you soon.
This is The Bill Press Show.
A single ember that escapes from a wildfire can travel more than a mile. That single ember can ignite and destroy your home or even your community. You can't control where that ember will land, only what happens when it does. Get Fire Adapted now at fireadapted.org.
Columbine, Virginia Tech,
Tucson,
Aurora,
Fort Hood, Oak Creek,
Newtown.
Newtown,
Newtown.
Newtown.
How many more? How many more? How many more colleges? How many more classrooms?
How many more movie theaters?
How many more houses of faith?
How many more shopping malls?
How many more street corners?
How many more?
How many more?
Enough. 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 Enough.
Demand a plan.
Right now. As a mom.
As a dad. As a friend. As a husband.
As a wife.
As an American.
As an American.
As an American.
As a human being.
For the children of Sandy Hook.
Demand a plan. No more lists of names. It's not too soon.
It's too late.
Now is the time.
Before we all know someone who loved someone on that list.
No more lists.
No more.
Who they might have been. No more.
If we had just done something yesterday.
It's time.
We can do better than this.
We can do better than this.
It's time.
It's time.
It's time for our leaders to act.
Demand a plan. Right now.
Right now.
You! Demand it!
Enough.
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 None of us would want to be told we can't marry the person we love. As Americans, we believe in freedom. That's what I fought for as a Marine, and that's what we believe in as Republicans. Freedom means freedom for everyone. I didn't used to understand the importance of same-sex marriage, but after learning my brother was gay, I wanted the same rights for him. He was the best man at my wedding, and I want to be the best man at his. It's only fair that Calvin should have the freedom to marry the person he loves, too.
It's time for marriage.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the program. My name is Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist for the Washington Post. Let's get right to it, Peter. Headline: Booze delivery service will be available to some parts of D.C. Meaning there is
possibly go wrong.
Now, if you are too lazy and or too drunk to get up and out of your home or apartment to get to the liquor store to get more of what you probably don't need, you can now have someone bring it to your door for a small fee of $5.
Oh.
This sounds like a terrible idea.
You're right. I mean, if you're too lazy or you're too drunk, you don't need to
need it.
You don't need to drink.
And it could potentially be hazardous to your health.
Exactly. Go to bed.
Go to bed.
It's time to go to bed.
Turn on the television. You know, this just seems...
I just need one more drink.
Like a horrible idea. I mean, I remember in college we had beer delivery service, but that was a little different.
Right.
You're at a party, you get a case. That's not like, hey, I'm already through one handle of Cutty Sark. I need another. I cannot be bothered to walk down the street. But that's not the only crazy booze news we have.
So New York City has these things called Frosties.
Yes.
PH. Frosties, that spelled the PH.
Right.
And this is all I read from the story. Frosties, a colorful, sugary, and very boozy slushie, sold and delivered via Instagram in New York City, is being investigated. So they're trying to shut it down. You like it on Instagram, you tell them where you are, and they bring it to you for $10. And they don't tell you what's in it. It's like ice cream and Everclear.
Again, two bad ideas, okay? Mixing booze with delivery almost will always end up in a disaster. I'm Clinton Yates. This is The Bill Press Show. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door.
but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
In the early 20th century, the war to end all wars didn't end war at all. It stoked the fires of change. A traumatized world was ripe for change. The world was ready for modernism. Modernists wanted to forget history, or at least reinterpret it. More than just a style, modernism applied to virtually all forms of creative expression. Innovative artists like Picasso, Yesha, Dali, they all started looking at their world differently. Other artists tried painting light itself. These were the Impressionists. Surrealists went a bit further. We had entered the age of the isms. Cubism, symbolism, futurism, constructivism. All these new modern ways of looking at the world blew people away. When it came to architecture, modernists were intrigued by emerging technology. Concrete, glass and steel featured heavily in their buildings. Modernists believed that they could design a better society. Ornamental indulgence was considered a frivolous waste of effort. They thought function should always dictate form, and that mankind's intelligence, creativity and capability for radical thinking should be celebrated. Take the Russian inventor Georgy Krutikov. He suggested an idea for a city held aloft by electrical currents. This at a time when there was barely enough wattage to keep the lights on. Not everything they designed was a resounding success. But you could argue modernism was the single most influential movement of the 20th century. From house music to housewares, tables and chairs to graphic design, all have been created by the aesthetics and ideas of modernism.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful.
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand and they don't get it and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense of what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university? And,
people like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
By United Way and the Ad Council.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Hey, gang. Thanks for tuning in to the program. I am Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist at the Washington Post. Today is Thursday, May 29th. Glad you could join us here on The Bill Press Show. If you're watching live on Free Speech TV or TawkrTV, welcome. You can see Peter's goofy, disgusting, grotesque pink eye.
Look.
Oh, no. I'm just joking.
It's bad.
Your pink eye is a coward.
I own up to the fact that it's bad. I woke up this morning and it was just shut.
It is what it is. At least
Cyprian's got the wide shot on.
At least you've got the glasses on.
That's
so
it.
That matters. Elisa Murphy is running the board.
Hey.
Of course, Alicia Cruz is taking your phone calls. Peter just mentioned Cyprian Bolding, who's operating the video and showing everything that we look like at all times, including my fidgety hands. And of course, you can tweet us at BP Show on the Twitter box. So I'm going on vacation next week, Peter.
Yeah?
I will give you a hint. Not this continent.
Oh, whoa.
Oh.
But a place I gather you like a lot.
Okay. All right.
Low-lying land.
All right.
I'm going to Amsterdam. That is where I will be going for the next week.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Oh.
See the look.
Okay.
Cyprian, tight shot on this.
Yeah.
No. The look on his face there was exactly what I was waiting for the surprise for. So, yes, I'm pretty excited about that. Going to be there for a week and do a lot of things. Have you been?
I've never been.
You've never been?
I've never been to Amsterdam.
Oh, that is stunning to me.
I know.
Huh.
Dude, that's exciting.
Yeah, I know. I'm pretty excited about it. I've been before. I went when I was like 12.
Okay.
That was obviously a different experience.
There, yeah.
It is 20 years later. I am kind of excited about what it's going to be like as a grown man versus as a young boy that had not seen much of the world but did take a walk through a certain district.
Sure.
As a kid with my mom. That was even weirder, but it happened.
Here's the deal.
Yeah.
This is going to be good because you're not 12. Right. So
Right.
like you could do more stuff, but you're also not like 21.
Right, not trying to while out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right, and have the best night of my life.
Yeah.
No, that's not on the docket.
Right,
Trying to have a good time.
Have a good head
Look at some.
about you. Yeah.
Well said. Look at some art. You know what I mean, and enjoy the scenery that is Holland.
That's exciting, dude.
Exactly. Thank you. So we got a lot to get to, but first.
This is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. Very exciting news if you grew up in a certain era. Yesterday, LeVar Burton launched a Kickstarter to bring back a web version of
Reading Rainbow.
Reading Rainbow.
Of course.
Oh, that's awesome.
He previously put out a tablet or an app that you can use on your tablet to watch Reading Rainbow and stuff like that. But he says, not a lot of kids. Not every kid has a tablet or access to a tablet. More kids have access to the internet, classrooms and libraries and things like that.
How is Reading Rainbow not still on the air?
Right.
What is wrong with that show?
Right.
Why would you not? That makes no sense.
He says he needs $1 million to get it up and do it the way he wants on the web. So there's a Kickstarter campaign. We're going to tweet out a link. at BP Show, so you can kick in a little cash.
Nice.
Thinking about doing that.
Shout out to my man Silas from college, who I worked on my college paper with, whose band used to frequently play an awesome rock cover of the Reading Rainbow song.
That's
I'm telling
awesome.
you, in dorky scenarios, that jam gets a party started.
I get that.
It's pretty cool. People sing along.
What city is the fittest in the country?
The one we are sitting in, of course. Look, don't you see this beautiful specimen of human? Okay, you don't know how many donuts I shoved into my pie hole before we got on the air this morning. You know why? Because I'm healthy.
A new report from the American College of Sports Medicine does in fact show that Washington, D.C. is the fittest city in the country, followed by number 2, Minneapolis, St. Paul, which I wouldn't.
Yeah, because it's so cold.
It's a big biking city, Minneapolis, as well.
But it's also cold, yeah.
Right.
Number 3, Portland, Oregon. Number 4, Denver, Colorado, which I get. And number 5, San Francisco.
Yeah, so by the way, I'm joking, okay? I'm not some narcissistic person. I just, thought it was a good opportunity to say that.
You're one of the more fit people.
I would like to think so, but that's just because I play sports, not because I care about it. Listen, by the by, you know how I also know that this is true? Because every single person who's not wearing a suit in D.C. at happy hour is wearing their workout gear.
That's so true.
It is really annoying. All right? I hate it. It is absolutely ridiculous. Has to be an in-between. Craziness.
Now, the 2014 U.S. Open will take place at Pinehurst, but it will not have Tiger Woods. He announced yesterday he is not going to be playing in the U.S. Open because of his bad back. He's still nursing that back, so he is going to sit this one out.
Listen, when that situation happened between him and his wife, I said then, and I still believe now, that guy was never going to win another major. Just lost it for whatever reason. Golf is such a psychological game. You don't just jump back on the horse as easily as that happened, or as easily as you think you want to when something like that happens. I feel bad for him. Guy's a great golfer. That's about it.
And we still think of him as a young guy.
I do not think of him as a young guy.
I do.
Right.
I think a lot of people still look at him as like one of the newer faces of golf. He's 38 years old.
Yeah, man.
That's when back problems start to kick in.
Exactly. Oh, tighten up on me. Exactly. Wait. Anyway,
there you go.
Thank you for that. So, switching gears to something far more important and, quite frankly, far more serious, we have on the line Huffington Post politics reporter Laura Bassett. How are you, Laura?
Hey, I'm great. Good morning.
It's good to talk to you again. Well, last time I actually talked to you, you were here, and this time we're on the phone, so that works better. So, let us discuss the situation in terms of everything that's revolving around the yes, all women debate. I don't even want to say debate. I'll just say hashtag. The situation with the fallout at UCSB and Elliot Rodger. I know you have been kind of, I don't want to say all over the place, in a lot of places talking about this. Where are we at now in terms of where you feel this discussion is in terms of what people are understanding about what feminism is even about in this country and how it relates to that story?
Oh, I think anytime you get an opportunity to discuss how women feel about the way that they're treated in such a comprehensive form, feminism has been around for many decades. But this gives people an opportunity to come in and say, what some of the most poignant tweets. There was one where someone said, yes, all women are told to scream fire instead of rape if they're being raped, and it just resonated with me because we were told that when we were younger, and no one ever questioned that. There's so many things that nobody ever questions. You're 9 years old, you're in school, and you're in a self-defense class, and they tell you to scream fire instead of rape because people are more likely to respond. Because people aren't going to care if you're being raped. I mean, that's what you're told when you're a kid. And nobody ever has a chance to really talk about these things until they all kind of bubble up to the surface with something like this. And so I think it's a really important conversation to be having. And I'm also sort of disheartened by some of the responses from men.
Yeah, and that's where the discussion becomes almost, it is rage-inducing. And I will say this, as a man, I can't even imagine as a woman what that sort of feels like when you get all these idiots behind their screens who just type, the most vile things. Speaking to your point before about self-defense, one of the things I was saying to someone earlier is that I don't think that most men realize, women are taught to internalize violence from men as a good thing and as a road to acceptance. You hear things like, oh, he just does that because he likes you, or oh, Boys
Right.
throw rocks on the playground at girls they like. That kind of stuff is beyond harmful. And I just don't believe any average man looks at that. They can see sort of the basics of obviously sexual assault and obviously domestic violence, but the microaggressions are so hard to identify. And that's where I think the Yes All Women hashtag really plays an important part.
Right, and I think it's been interesting. I mean, the Yes All Women hashtag is a response to the Not All Men hashtag.
Yeah.
Which is, everybody knows not all men are rapists. Everybody knows not all men are serial killers. Not all men objectify women. But yes, all women have been objectified by men. So to respond in that way is to be defensive and not to listen to women and not to participate in the discussion about what's going on. And what's particularly interesting to me is Aaron Rodgers, this kid that did this. His language, he was a participant in these men's rights communities and in these pickup artist communities. And the ways that they've responded is to say, well, if we had just taught him better game, then this wouldn't have happened. If one woman had slept with him, this wouldn't have happened. And it just perpetuates this idea that A, men are entitled to women's bodies, and B, that women are objects to be won, to be conquered, to be manipulated into having sex. And it's just incredible to watch people actually talk this way and believe this way. And you could see, I watched this kid's videos over and over and over. I was so fascinated just try to figure out what was going on in his head. And I mean, his language is just so steeped in, I'll be the ultimate alpha male if I destroy every sorority woman in his house. It's about masculinity, it's about sex, it's about conquering women. And that is what he learned from the men's rights community.
Hey, Laura, it's Peter. One of the things I found fascinating about this story sort of in the days after was this conversation that was opened up by a friend of the show, Ann Hornaday, a movie critic with the Washington Post, where she sort of called Hollywood out about mainstream movies and the way that some of the better-known filmmakers treat women and view them as conquests. What's sort of the role do you think that Hollywood has played in feeding into this whole thing?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting because the shooter's dad. I mean, I don't know that why this is relevant, but the shooter's dad is a Hollywood director, and yeah, I think there's been a lot of movies in which there's kind of a nerdy guy, and there's a girl that's out of his league, and he, does this series of things to convince the girl that he's there for her and that she, and then eventually she falls for him, and so people are taught, that a woman is sort of this like sexual thing to be won, and a kid, no matter what his interests are, could do this series of things, could get a makeover or drive a fancy car or get fancy sunglasses, which are two specific things that Aaron Rodgers talked about in his videos. He said, "Look at my sunglasses, look at my BMW, look how magnificent I am. Why am I not getting women's attention?" As if you just spend a certain amount of money on yourself and you just follow these certain rules, you will get the girl at the end, as it happens in Hollywood movies.
Sorry, I just wanted to say one of their reactions, though, to me proved her whole point. Yeah. They both lashed out very personally as if they couldn't understand that this was a larger issue than them. Did that on any level to you, Laura, prove that what, Anne was trying to get at made a whole lot of sense?
I don't know if it proves it, but I think it's such a typical response. Anytime you try to have a conversation about anything besides, guns and mental health, it always ends up being that way. Whenever you try to talk about violent video games, they say, "Oh, this isn't look at all the kids playing violent video games that aren't doing this," Yeah. And I think it's easy to get defensive because nobody wants a mass murder blamed on them,
Yeah.
But obviously, we need to have a talk about what we're teaching our kids. What society is learning from this Hollywood culture of women. Of men being entitled to women.
But that I think is the best point and the biggest argument for this hashtag and for this conversation is just shut up and listen.
Yeah.
Just shut up and listen. Like, I like to consider myself a fairly evolved man, right? Like, I didn't grow up that way. But, like, it's a struggle, and I work with that. But you know,
right, but you don't get a medal for that.
No, and I'm
Right,
not looking for it.
right.
But like, I consider myself that way. But I also, it's nice to check myself and read these things and just remember that no matter, you know, how enlightened I think I am, like this still happens all the time. And the fact that I have 2 sons, like that plays a big factor in how I view this. And it was really worthwhile to just shut up and read some of the things that women had to say. Like it was good.
Yeah, it's really refreshing to hear you say that, you know, because we know it's not all men, but when you say you know, get defensive and say, oh, I'm not like this and not all men are like this, you're not listening. And I think the whole point of this, I mean, it's great to hear you say you have 2 sons, and one of the things that I've read, you know, one of the Yes All Women hashtags was a woman saying, I tell my daughter all the time ways not to get raped and ways not to be the victim of domestic abuse. Do you talk to your sons about how not to rape and how not to become domestic abusers? You know, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but everybody should. You know, it should be as much of a thing boys hear as girls hear, which is why I really want men to be involved in the conversation and not just feeling defensive, you know?
Yeah, it's not an attack on men. The Yes All Women hashtag
Right.
is definitely not an attack on men.
Exactly.
And if you read it that way,
you are part of the
you
problem.
have the problem.
Exactly. Laura Bassett, Huffington Post politics reporter. Thank you so much, Laura.
Thanks for having me.
All right, you can follow her on Twitter at @LEBassett or online at HuffingtonPost.com. Let me make one thing clear, people. The first human privilege is male privilege. I'm Clinton Yates. This is The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
You make it sound very easy to take these 90-degree turns in your career. You went from engineering to law. But there's an awful lot of people at that age who feel they're on a track, they've invested time in learning a career, and they need to see it through to the end, or maybe their parents are pushing them to stay in one route. What is your advice for a young person?
Stay away from your parents.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
My mom is a pretty spectacular human being. We essentially came to the United States as refugees. And that is when I really got to understand who my mom was as a person. Being a refugee in a foreign country, you would think that it would affect you so much. It was like my mom, nothing changed for my mom. What was really at her core and her center was always being with her kids and getting to spend time with them and making sure that they were okay and making sure that they could still go out and play soccer. I knew that if my goal was to go to Liberia and to work on economic justice so that, you know, kids could go to school and have access to a doctor if they have malaria, that if I bet on their moms, we win.
I think I just come from a lineage of kick-ass women is all I can say. My grandmother came to this country from Mexico as a single mom with 5 children. And I, you know, have an amazing mother who had 3 children, was going to school, working full-time. I mean, almost my story. But she did that and got her bachelor's degree at 40. And so I had a great role model. When I came home and told my mom I was pregnant, her response to me wasn't, your life is over. Her response to me is, well, I want a plan. You need to, you know, let me know what you're going to do about this because you're now responsible for somebody else.
I was the first one in my family to go to college, and my parents were very proud of it. They both had to work. My mom in a factory and my dad in the supermarket, and I was their success story. However, on graduation day, they said, are you going to be a doctor? Are you going to be an engineer? You're going to be a businessman? What are you going to, a lawyer? I said, I'm going to join the Peace Corps. And they said, what? My parents were very much opposed to this, and it was very difficult.
How much pressure did they put on you?
Tremendous pressure. Up until we were leaving from O'Hare Airport for me to go to Peru, my mother questioning me, like, where is Peru? You've never been out of the country. What do you know? Do they have doctors? Do they speak English there? What are you going to eat? You know, you like my cooking? I said, Mom, I'm going to be a pioneer. Why do you always have to be the pioneer? Let them do it. Let them come back, and then you go. I said, no, I want to be the first to go.
I grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood, so there was a lot of gang activity, and one of my friends actually was murdered on a basketball court when a 15-year-old child shot him in the back of the head. And I was just hopeless. And my mom actually, she brought me to a place of empathy for the kids who were involved in actually murdering him, because my mom sort of said, look, where do you think those kids are coming from? And then she said, so if you're angry about it, do something. Actually change the way this world works.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the program. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in for Bill Press. I'm a columnist at the Washington Post. Tonight, Peter, at the National Harbor, 8 p.m., the kids will take to the stage.
It's a war on the shore.
to try to win the Scripps National Spelling Bee. The only reason this story is important to us is because we have two, not one, but two people in this building, in my vision, who have participated in this event. Peter, you go first. Actually, that's a brazen lie. No, Elisa, you go first. Ladies first.
Go ahead, ladies.
Pardon me.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was
Tell
actually, I was in the fifth.
I didn't know this either.
I didn't know that about you either, Peter. But I was in the fifth grade and won state, but lost out on one word that will haunt me for the rest of my life.
Hold on, which state? Take us through it.
California.
Okay, the great
in
state of
Sacramento,
California.
the state capital.
Yeah.
And the losing word was mayonnaise.
Mayonnaise.
And you know why?
Can I guess you put in just one N? It's two N's, right?
It's two. I missed up the ends, and I was raised on Miracle Whip.
Oh, of course.
So I never even saw a bottle of mayonnaise. I was like, "What is this?"
Blame your parents.
Exactly.
That's devastating. Peter, you?
I was the state spelling bee champion for the state of South Carolina, which, to be honest,
in your defense,
thank God for Mississippi, or else we would have been like the absolute worst.
What year were you? What grade were you in?
I was state spelling bee champ 3rd and 4th grade.
Oh.
In 5th grade, I went out, and I'll never forget. I had 2 chances to win, and I lost because the first word I misspelled was shellac.
Okay, SHELLACK.
See, I put the K on. No, there's no K.
What?
There's no K.
Come
it's
on.
Just a C.
No way.
I had the same
Wow.
You know where I'm coming from.
Yes, I totally.
I put a K on the end. There's no K on the end. But the kid that had the chance to beat me, he misspelled it. So then we kept going, and then I went out on, and this one I'm genuinely embarrassed about, Duchess.
Yeah, that's an easy word to spell.
Did you add a T or something?
Yeah.
I put in T.
Yeah.
There's no T in Duchess.
Alas.
Got me.
Man. I was never good enough to do anything like that. Listen, and I give all the credit to kids who go through this because I cannot imagine how stressful that is. I used to get stressed out playing Little League Baseball, trying to advance runners from 2nd to 3rd and hit the ball on the right side. That wasn't on ESPN.
It was terrifying.
Man, so we'll see who gets to win it tonight, and whoever does, you're probably going to be the smartest kid in your school.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. Anyway, all right, when we get back, we'll be talking to Justin Sink, staff writer for The Hill. It's the Bill Press Show. I'm Clinton Yates.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I talk to undergraduates and graduate students who are desperate to go out and start something and build something and be the one to come up with that silver bullet solution. And I just want to say slow down.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
Most of the people you're talking to who want to come into the social change space, are they prepared?
If you're early in your career, there's a couple of really important things to do. The first one is just to shut the hell up and don't talk for about 5 years and work really, really hard. The only way you're going to be given more difficult things to do is by solving the ones you're already given. And if you're somebody who's always complaining or wants to be promoted above where they really are, you can't learn enough to start to take on a greater pool of responsibilities.
Advice you would give a person coming out of college is go work for other people, make your mistakes on their dime.
That sounds like me, absolutely.
It does sound like you.
And you know who that came from is one of my board members, Eric Buttline. Eric had seen me start a few companies as a young kid. I mean, I started my first real company when I was 16. And Eric said, "Chid, do me a favor. I know you have this thing in your head that you think you're this great entrepreneur, but like go work for somebody for a little while and just learn how things are supposed to be done. And when you're done with that, let's have another conversation about, you know, your next venture."
And I think another thing to remember, and this is something that I've really only learned in the past couple of years, is that although the problems are urgent and so important for us to address, I need to have more patience. I'm not going to solve those problems on my own. You're not going to solve those problems on your own. I'm an apprentice in all of this. You know, I'm an apprentice in life. I'm an apprentice in problem solving. I'm not going to change the world until I'm at least 65. That's my goal at this point.
California, or the Golden State, has been in the midst of a 3-year drought, and this year, some scientists predict could be the driest in 500 years. Governor Jerry Brown declared a state of emergency in January and in February of this year. The world's 10th largest economy, California is also the United States' top agricultural producer. Half of all our fruits and vegetables come from California. The Golden State is not the only place on the planet struggling for this vital resource. In December 2013, the World Resources Institute found that 37 countries face severe water shortages. Free Speech TV would love to know what you think about this fight for water, especially if you're from the Golden State. Please call our comment line at 1-888-378-8855 or email us at comments@freespeech.org to let us know your thoughts.
Tune into the Thom Hartmann Program, a live broadcast featuring the nation's #1 progressive talk show host. Phones open at 3 p.m. Eastern, only on Free Speech TV.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the program. Thank you all for tuning in to The Bill Press Show. My name is Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist for the Washington Post. Pete Ogburn is to my right.
Hey.
And to my left is Justin Sink, staff writer for The Hill. What's up, man?
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
No problem. We've been talking a lot about Edward Snowden, who has been all over the telly. He was with Brian Williams on NBC last night. I just want to get your general thoughts about sort of how that went. I mean, it was a very interesting interview. I think it sort of humanized him a lot. You know, what did you take away from it, Justin?
I would say my big takeaway is that he didn't like season 2 of The Wire, which I think is a mistake. He's got to stick with it. It'll come together.
That's funny. Yeah.
In all seriousness, though, I did think that he had clearly kind of done his homework in terms of humanizing himself, in terms of trying to present an image as somebody who was a little more considerate of his circumstances and of the effect that what he had done had had, but also continued to kind of mount the defense for why it was important to reveal information about these surveillance programs. And so, we heard from him that he wants to come home, and I think, if he does want to come back to the U.S., part of that will be kind of dealing with the legal ramifications, and part of doing that is explaining to people why he did what he did and why he doesn't believe he should be punished for it.
We got a phone call on this matter, 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. Robert in the district. First of all, where in D.C. are you?
Actually, I'm driving down I-95 to a metro station to go into work right now.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I won't blow your cover. Anyway, your thoughts.
I'm in the car. I'm on the speakerphone. So
safety first.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So what do you think about the Ed Snowden situation?
I'm not a fan. I don't see him as any type of hero. To me, he's a traitor. He stole documents, and you take an oath when you go to work in those places. He went to his last job with the intent of stealing documents to put out there. And, if you're that disturbed by everything, then you don't keep working there.
So you don't think there's anything remotely noble in how he went about it? And that wasn't changed by what you heard him say last night?
No, not at all.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Robert. All right. I mean, look, that we can get sort of back into all of that, but I think there were some important things. We got some audio I want to play. We played it earlier in the show, but I want to get back to what John Kerry said, because, again, he is the Secretary of State, and he has been woofing, as my dad would say, about this entire scenario. The first thing he said was about what. Anyway, let's just get to it. I want to let his words speak for himself. Alyssa.
What he's done is hurt his country. What he's done is expose for terrorists a lot of mechanisms which now affect operational security of those terrorists and make it harder for the United States to break up plots, harder to protect our nation.
He went on to make a point about what constitutes or what defines a patriot.
Patriots don't go to Russia. They don't seek asylum in Cuba. They don't seek asylum in Venezuela. They fight their cause here. There are many a patriot. You can go back to the Pentagon Papers with Dan Ellsberg and others who stood and went to the court system of America and made their case. Edward Snowden is a coward. He is a traitor, and he has betrayed his country. And if he wants to come home tomorrow to face the music, he can do so.
Justin, how do you think this kind of attitude reflects on the administration?
I thought it was interesting for two reasons. One is we heard from President Obama yesterday, him acknowledge that transparency was kind of a key part of this sort of multilateral, multinational approach that he thinks kind of underpins the future of American diplomacy. And so for John Kerry on one hand to be kind of, like you said, like a wrestler, like a heel, just kind of, oh, come on, you're a traitor, this is ridiculous. And then for the president, on the other hand, to be saying, well, it is a security vulnerability when we're doing things that our allies don't understand and can understandably be kind of outraged by or concerned over, and this fuels propaganda from terrorism, all these different things. It's hard to reconcile those two ideas. The other thing that's interesting, I think, on Kerry specifically is that it's unclear to me what he thinks he's accomplishing by kind of provoking Edward Snowden. Snowden himself said in the interview last night that he kind of tried to go through some of these venues, tried to bring it up with people within the NSA to say, I believe these to be abuses. And according to his recollection, was told to kind of sit down and shut up. It seems completely plausible based on what we know about the intelligence community and what the reporting's kind of shown since the documents came out. And so I do think that there was kind of a straw manning, a dishonest conversation about the avenues that were available to Snowden. All that being said, of course, I think it's very clear that he broke the law and that there are repercussions for that.
Peter, you were talking earlier about an exchange the two of them had about what's happening.
Yeah, so one of the interesting things that came up, and I was trying to find the exact quote, but there was an issue of why he's in Russia. And so he says, I had never intended on staying in Russia. I was planning on going somewhere else, but the State Department revoked my passport. So when you ask me, why am I in Russia? I tell you, go ask the State Department. And John Kerry's response to that was, he seemed, for someone who calls himself so smart, that's a dumb answer.
Yeah.
Well, and when you start to play out the logic of that, yeah, he was going to flee Russia to go to Cuba and then maybe Venezuela. Neither, the same complaint that has been lodged against Russia, which is compared to the U.S.
Right.
I mean, can certainly also be said of especially Cuba and Venezuela as well. I mean, free press protections, open kind of discourse and dialogue about what intelligence services in those countries are doing. I think the U.S., pales in comparison to the U.S. And so it's not, that's some deflection, I think.
I guess my takeaway from that exchange is that I don't know that John Kerry comes off looking so great having this conversation of name calling and
he's arguing in the frat house about who's going to buy the beer. Is what's happening, and you're like, look,
you're a coward.
Right? Man,
dumb answer.
Man, who talks like that? The guy's the Secretary of State. It's unbelievable. 866-55 Press. You're a popular guy, Justin. We got more phone calls. Dave in Canton, what's going on?
Yes. Good morning. You're discussing John Kerry and Edward Snowden. Well, the problem with John Kerry is that he's been co-opted by his wife's money. But in the 70s, if you'll remember, he was against all of this. And that's why they passed the Church Amendment to not have the CIA spy. And that's what's wrong. And that's Edward Snowden doesn't even talk about it.
That was a point that was made by an earlier caller, which is that John Kerry's in the 1% now, and that has drastically changed his views on what should and should not be done as far as the NSA's outreach. Thank you very much for the call, Dave. And I want to read a tweet from Astasia at Astasia SJ, and she says, the Bush administration was horrendous. That being said, hearing John Kerry's comments make me glad he is not POTUS, as in the President of the United States, which is a very interesting comment. So where do you think the administration sort of tries to spin this from here?
Well, I think the next big deadline that we're coming up against is the 1 year sort of asylum that Russia has granted Edward Snowden. And so what's unclear is whether that will be extended beyond the 1 year. Certainly, I don't think U.S.-Russia relations have improved since Edward Snowden was given asylum there, so there's a distinct possibility that he'll be able to stay. And at the same time, I mean, putting John Kerry's comments aside, certainly from the White House, we haven't heard, I think, a big push on Edward Snowden. It's not something that they bring up regularly. When Putin and President Obama speak on the phone, often Jake Harney gets asked, did they talk about Edward Snowden? And it's something that he's reticent to mention or talk about. And so it doesn't seem like there's a kind of big sustained push to bring him back to the U.S. I think it's a headache that the White House and the Obama administration would just as well like to go away.
Right. Fair enough. All right. Justin Sink of The Hill is here. When we get back, we're going to talk a little bit more about what the president talked about yesterday. He spoke at the commencement speech at West Point. Always interesting when you put the president in front of a bunch of military men and hear what he has to say. This is The Bill Press Show. My name is Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist for The Washington Post. We'll be right back.
This is The Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I'm the retired bishop with the Episcopal Church as the bishop for all chaplains in federal service. I read that there was a group of people that represented a sense of injustice that I had. We'd lost Zuccotti. I mean, there was a kind of a hope that maybe Trinity Church would be gracious and give refuge. We picked this day where we would gather and demonstrate that Trinity was closing its ears to what was happening. We marched around the block And I realized that, my goodness, they're carrying a ladder. And I thought, well, this is the moment. You could feel a spiritual presence. You could feel a certain something. And then the cops came in. It got brutal.
I'm with you right here. Robin, I'm here.
The church needed, in this moment in history, to stand alongside of these protesters. The truth of Christ is found in the pews, is found in the institutional church, but it is also found in the streets. It's found in the honesty and the integrity, the insistence of people that you find in Occupy Wall Street.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
What's up, folks? I'm Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist at The Washington Post. Thank you all for tuning into The Bill Press Show. Today's Thursday, May 29th. In studio with us here is Justin Sink, staff writer for The Hill. What's up, man?
Hey, how's it going?
You can follow him at JTS The Hill on the Twitter box. And, of course, his stuff is online at thehill.com. Peter Ogburn is here with me as well.
Hey. We're watching tweets at BP Show, by the way, where we're tweeting. So
yes,
you
we
got a
are.
comment, send it there.
Tweet. I will reply to you. And if you come with something lame, I will hit you with a hashtag come on, son. That's how that works. So the president spoke at West Point. It was not exactly what we might call, I don't know, well received by some people. We got a couple of clips from things that he said. First, he talked about what the usage of the military should be in this country.
The United States will use military force unilaterally if necessary when our core interests demand it. When our people are threatened, when our livelihoods are at stake, when the security of our allies is in danger.
Kind of some crucial pauses there as far as what we actually mean by threats. Very interesting. He also talked about terrorism and what that is as far as the threat it makes as well.
For the foreseeable future, the most direct threat to America, at home and abroad, remains terrorism. But a strategy that involves invading every country that harbors terrorist networks is naive and unsustainable.
The last thing he said was, in some people's minds, the most important thing he said, not necessarily the smartest thing he said, was the old hammer versus nail analogy.
Just because we have the best hammer does not mean that every problem is a nail. And because the costs associated with military action are so high, you should expect every civilian leader, and especially your commander-in-chief, to be clear about how that awesome power should be used.
And now one of the other things he said is that this is going to be one of the first graduating classes from West Point that will not necessarily be sent directly into war. Now, I just want to get your thoughts, Justin, on sort of a lot of that. A lot of people think that he brought up some foreign policy straw man arguments and then knocked them down, which was not necessarily very appropriate for West Point. You know, what did you think about what he said?
Well, I think the best way to kind of evaluate the speech is to look at why he was giving it. And what was clearly true is both that he's seen his foreign policy ratings take a huge hit. Before, or through his entire first term, he was in high positive numbers on that count. Over 50%, way more positives than negatives. In the last couple of years, he's seen a reversal of that. He's seen independents, some Democrats, really abandon him on foreign policy, and it's partially because of the Edward Snowden disclosures. It's partially because of situations in Ukraine and Syria kind of souring. So that has kind of bred a criticism that the president doesn't have a cohesive strategy and doesn't have kind of a coherent vision for foreign policy. That's, in turn, I think, why he gave this speech. He wanted to rebut that criticism, explain what he was doing, what the sort of Obama doctrine is. The problem, of course, is that the president's kind of a pragmatist. He takes situations as they come up. He responds to what the public wants to do, which very often is not to intervene. And so for President Obama, he had a very difficult task of trying to explain why he had made, I think, a series of ad hoc decisions. And that's a really tall task. It's especially a tall task when the audience you're trying to convince is sort of foreign policy hawks who are huge fans of kind of grand theories that it should inform every decision that leaders make.
Yeah, it's West Point. I'm fairly certain that everybody there kind of doesn't have a problem with war. We're talking with Justin Sink, staff writer for The Hill. Shinseki.
Yes.
Does this guy last the day, the week? What's the deal with the fallout from the VA situation?
I think I and all other White House reporters have already canceled our Friday evening plans preemptively.
Gotcha.
Date night is canceled. You were going to be down in the basement waiting for a release. It's very tough to see how he survives much longer. I mean, we saw big Democratic names, people like Al Franken coming out last night saying that he had to go. I think at this point it's over 50 members of Congress, over 20 Democrats who have called for his resignation. And, I mean, that IG report was horrible not just for the situation that was going on in Phoenix, but really an indictment of systematic problems. And when we heard the president speak about this last week, that was what he said. He said, I think Eric Shinseki is somebody who's very dedicated to helping veterans in the U.S., but
a veteran himself.
Yeah.
But
I want to know the extent of the problem here and how widespread it is. Talking to White House officials, they said that he was kind of on probation going into the release of this report, and the White House is kind of conducting its own internal report. And they made very clear that unlike controversies surrounding Kathleen Sebelius with the rollout of Obamacare, they don't know if this is fixable. They don't, at least with the current leadership.
Right. To be fair, though, I would say a lot of that support for his ouster is, listen, that's an easy political point if you're a Democrat in a red state because nobody's going to fight you on that. And, so I wouldn't paint necessarily that much into how many people are calling for it, but it is quite a bit.
I think that the big issue here is not whether or not he gets fired, but what the hell do they do?
Yeah.
Because this scandal predates the Obama administration. It predates Shinseki. It's been going on for a long time, and it's also not one central agency that they just sort of get into shape. It's all over the place. It's huge. And so what do they have any kind of plan as to what they're going to do?
Well, I mean, you're right. So this is a problem that, arguably could go back to the Civil War. I mean, veterans have been, struggling to get the benefits that they were promised throughout almost the entirety of American history. And I do think that the White House and the administration are, pretty kind of laser focused on this wait time issue. We'll definitely see kind of a triage effort in Phoenix that should help that medical center and specifically. What will be interesting is if they can parlay this into legislative action to bring additional funding into the VA to try to, it's very expensive to provide specialized medical care, especially with the wind down of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. You've got lots of veterans coming home, lots of veterans who are going to need medical service. And so this is a problem that's going to require a lot of money and time.
One just quick thing I just wanted to point out before I know we're going to wrap is we've heard from a lot of people who say once they or people that they know or family members get that care from the VA, it's great.
Yeah.
Yes.
It works. Right.
It works really well. problem is getting there.
All right, Justin, thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks so much for having me.
Appreciate it. That's Justin Sink. He's a staff writer at The Hill. You can follow him on Twitter at JTSTheHill and online at thehill.com. I'm Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist for The Washington Post. We'll be right back. This is The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I probably would make a time machine. I would make medicine for the sick. I'd probably invent something new.
我会赢到5个总冠军戒指。
If I could have an extra 5 years to live. You said 5, right? 5 years. It's a long time.
I would try to fix everything I did bad.
I would bring my uncle back because I miss him very much. I would get more hamsters. I would probably want to go looking for dark matter. I think I'd go looking for aliens. If I could live an extra 5 years. I was thinking about making like a helicopter, like a wooden helicopter, but I don't have any wood.
I want to go check out the moon sometime.
I'd probably teach my sister not to hate tuna. I would try and invent a machine that lets you run at light speed. If I had 5 more extra years to live, I would be the boss of all the chipmunks. Eu cantaria na frente de 1 milhão de pessoas. I don't really know. I think I'd do anything. Why are you asking me that?
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
This is the Bill Press Show.
All right, welcome back to the program. My name is Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist for the Washington Post. I'm filling in for Bill here, obviously, but it is time to look over what POTUS is going to do for the day, Peter.
Yeah.
At 2:55, well, actually, hold on, pardon me. In a couple hours, at 11:10, he's going to be delivering remarks at the White House Healthy Kids and Safe Sports Concussion Summit. I don't exactly know what that will be. What do you think that will entail?
I imagine there's a safety for kids in sports thing. He's probably just going to get up and...
He's also taking part in a clinic, which could be problematic for him if he decides to put up...
Don't shoot any jump shots.
Don't put up no shots.
Lay it up.
Layups,
Just
man.
lay it up.
Nothing but layups. Anyway, that's what he's doing. He's doing it for the kids today, making sure they stay safe. I'm Clinton Yates. This is the Bill Press Show. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
California, or the Golden State, has been in the midst of a 3-year drought, and this year, some scientists predict could be the driest in 500 years. Governor Jerry Brown declared a state of emergency in January and in February of this year. The world's 10th largest economy, California is also the United States' top agricultural producer. Half of all our fruits and vegetables come from California. The Golden State is not the only place on the planet struggling for this vital resource. In December 2013, the World Resources Institute found that 37 countries face severe water shortages. Free Speech TV would love to know what you think about this fight for water, especially if you're from the Golden State. Please call our comment line at 1-888-378-8855 or email us at comments@freespeech.org to let us know your thoughts.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
I'm a Piston fan. Their slogan was, "We come to work." That's what Detroit about. That's why they used it. It's a team thing. They won 2 championships, a team. There was no star. No mayor can come in here and be a star. It's a team thing. No governors can come in here and think you can do it by yourself. It's a team thing. You got communities, you got ideas too. The only thing wrong with Detroit, people have lost hope here. Residents, city workers, so much corruption, they lose hope. But I grew up here. I love this city. I think it can come back. I've been working for the city 24 and a half years. Within the last 10 years, we took 4 pay cuts and then an additional 10% wage cut. I've lost a home.
When you take all of the decisions out of the city of Detroit, all of us, then what do you have? Exactly what we got. A lot of problems. Every time the city seems to fall into a problem, it's always on the backs of us workers.
You wake up out of a dead sleep and you jump behind the wheel and take off driving and try to get everybody there safe, not knowing really what you're pulling up if you're not eligible for Social Security. So the pension is my sole salary at this point.
We've been in business here 39 years. We've seen a lot of changes in Detroit. The area was a lot of industry, a lot of city workers. It's getting very tough for the city workers. It's getting tough for us as a business people.
Response times are increasing because of the closing of companies, which takes your insurance rate through the roof. So all the things that affect us affect the citizens.
I worked for the city in different capacities for 29 years. I feel like an old jacket. They use me up and they throw me away. In my condition, nobody's gonna hire me. I'm 68 years old. Half the times, I can't get my blood pressure medicine. It's either feeding myself blood pressure or paying bills.
7:54.
But time they take all the deductions for I have my car insurance, my house insurance, and my health insurance taken out. So the time they take all that, I'll get about $300 after they take all that out. I don't understand it. I can't see how the governor is allowing this to happen and what they're doing and they want to blame it all on the seniors. Not only the seniors, but the city workers. And we worked hard. I know I worked hard.
I've been in Detroit since 1946. I was 14 years old when I came in. I don't live large at all. I wish I could. I don't know when the last time I've been shopping. I only get $1,100, and I'm 81 years old. And I need every penny that I can get and that I do get. And I'm very, very upset about the idea of them taking away my pensions that I worked 30 years for. I think it's terrible that they talk about Detroit like they do, because Detroit has been very good to me.
I have a lot of city workers coming in with their uniforms on, Detroit Water Department, Police Department, Fire Department. I get a lot of people, the Border Patrol come in. So if I lose that customer base, I'm going to be in a position where I might have to close down. If they take away their pensions, if they start cutting jobs, it's going to cut into a large percentage of not only our business, but other businesses that are in the city of Detroit. We're here. We've been here for 26 years. We're still trying to do business in the city.
Detroiters are survivors. They tough. They adapt. But only can do so much when your politicians are ahead of you and we're not on the same team. We're not going to let Detroit be erased, bulldozed to where we're going to fight to the bitter end. Detroit going to survive.
Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the program. My name is Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist for the Washington Post. It is Thursday, May 29th, 2014. Not exactly the most celebratory day in America, and it's not every day that you get to say that the true voice of a generation passed. But that is exactly what happened with Dr. Maya Angelou, who was found dead in her home in Winston-Salem, North Carolina at the age of 86 yesterday. I don't think it's possible to overstate her importance to this nation as a voice, as a human, and who has done a lot of different things. But because of her status as an American hero, as far as I'm concerned, we're going to play one of her more famous public speaking, events in full. And I want everybody to hear this, and we're doing this because there's not every, you're going to hear a lot of different people talk about their impact of her on their lives, but I thought it made sense for us to hear specifically what she said at President Bill Clinton's inauguration in 1993. It made her the first poet to make an inaugural recitation since Robert Frost. Here it is in full, Maya Angelou, 93.
A rock, a river, a tree, hosts to species long since departed, marked the mastodon, the dinosaur, who left dry tokens of their sojourn here on our planet floor. Any broad alarm of their hastening doom is lost in the gloom of dust and ages. But today, the rock cries out to us, clearly, forcefully, "Come, you may stand upon my back and face your distant destiny, but seek no haven in my shadow. I will give you no hiding place down here. You, created only a little lower than the angels, have crouched too long in the bruising darkness, have lain too long face down in ignorance, your mouths spilling words armed for slaughter. The rock cries out to us today, you may stand upon me, but do not hide your face. Across the wall of the world, a river sings a beautiful song. It says, come, rest here by my side. Each of you, a bordered country, delicate and strangely made, proud, yet thrusting perpetually under siege. Your armed struggles for profit have left collars of waste upon my shore, currents of debris upon my breast. Yet today I call you to my riverside, if you will study war no more. Come, clad in peace, and I will sing the songs the Creator gave to me when I and the tree and the rock were one. Before cynicism was a bloody sear across your brow, and when you yet knew, you still knew nothing. The river sang and sings on. There is a true yearning to respond to the singing river and the wise rock. So say the Asian, the Hispanic, the Jew, the African, the Native American, the Sioux, the Catholic, the Muslim, the French, the Greek, the Irish, the rabbi, the priest, the sheik, the gay, the straight, the preacher, the privileged, the homeless, the teacher. They all hear the speaking of the tree. They hear the first and last of every tree speak to humankind today. Come to me, here beside the river. Plant yourself beside the river. Each of you, descendant of some passed-on traveler, has been paid for. You who gave me my first name, you Pawnee, Apache, Seneca, you Cherokee Nation, who rested with me, then forced on bloody feet, left me to the employment of other seekers, desperate for gain, starving for gold. You the Turk, the Arab, the Swede, the German, the Eskimo, the Scot, you the Ashanti, the Yoruba, the Kru, bought, sold, stolen, arriving on a nightmare, praying for a dream. Here, root yourselves beside me. I am that tree planted by the river which will not be moved. I the rock, I the river, I the tree, I am yours. Your passages have been paid. Lift up your faces. You have a piercing need for this bright morning dawning for you. History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again. Lift up your eyes upon this day breaking for you. Give birth again to the dream. Women, children, men, take it into the palms of your hands. Mold it into the shape of your most private need. Sculpt it into the image of your most public self. Lift up your hearts. Each new hour holds new chances for new beginnings. Do not be wedded forever to fear, yoked eternally to brutishness. The horizon leans forward, offering you space to place new steps of change. Here, on the pulse of this fine day, you may have the courage to look up and out and upon me, the rock, the river, the tree, your country. No less to Midas than the mendicant, no less to you now than the mastodon then. Here, on the pulse of this new day, you may have the grace to look up and out and into your sister's eyes and into your brother's face, your country, and say simply, very simply, with hope, good morning.
That was, of course, Maya Angelou in 1993 speaking at President Clinton's inauguration. It is called On the Pulse of Morning. Again, we played that in full because, you know, as a poet and as a person, Maya Angelou had very few comparative, you know, not even rivals, but just there was really nobody else in her sphere as far as what she meant to America. We come from this from very different standpoints. Peter, what is Maya Angelou to you?
I'm going to be perfectly honest. Mm-hmm. I was not exposed to Maya Angelou until much later in life.
Yeah.
I grew up in the South.
Yeah.
And I know she grew up in the South, but I know she and I had very different experiences.
Absolutely.
It was not ever required reading from me.
Okay.
I educated myself on it after I got out of school. And I was blown away by her biography.
Yeah.
Not so much her works, which
were
is fair.
Amazing. I mean, that's fine.
Which were amazing.
You do not have to buy into every single thing that she ever put out or espoused to recognize her and who she is in American society.
I took a look yesterday at a couple of her obituaries, And just this is her biography, right? So when we leave this world, if you can come close to matching this, good on you. She was the very first female African-American cable car conductor in San Francisco. She was an actress, a playwright, a newspaper editor, a professor, a civil rights leader, a director, producer. She spoke 6 languages. She was a Grammy Award winner. She was a movie actress. She was a screenwriter. She had her own line of greeting cards. She was a cookbook author. She was a radio host. She won the Medal of Freedom. Oh, yeah, and she was also a poet.
Right.
And author.
Who spoke at presidential inaugurations.
I mean,
yeah, it's
that's a life well lived.
Staggering amount of work from her. And I will tell you this, as somebody that was exposed to her works very early on. You know, again, her role as a poet and as an author is one thing. But I remember as a child, you know, you see people in your lives and how they are interacted with in society. And to me, she was the first Black woman I ever could think of whom people took seriously all across the board, you know, and that says so much to me as a kid, because you think to yourself, oh, you've got to do this, you've got to do that in order to ensure that in society, people look at you as a whole, people look at you as an equal, people look at you as a peer. And she was a woman who, no matter whom you were speaking to, garnered that kind of respect. And all the things you just named in terms of what she did, in terms of what she meant, in terms of all of the different jobs. The Onion headline, I'll read this to you, almost spoke as exactly, it almost said exactly what you said.
Oh, really?
They take a satirical look at life, and their headline for her was literally just everything she's done. Maya Angelou, poet, author, civil rights activist, and holy cow, Tony Award-winning nominated actress, college professor, magazine editor, streetcar conductor. Really? Streetcar conductor? Wow. Calypso singer, nightclub performer, and foreign journalist, dead at 86. And that's all it said. So it should tell you something that a site that specializes in satire couldn't even find anything, or didn't even have it, wasn't willing to go there, because that's how large and how impressive her body of work is in total. That to me said a whole lot.
No, that's a really good point. And you know, it's when you mention about how she was viewed, right? She was without a doubt American royalty, right? And I know that that's a phrase that we use for, you know, guys like Tom Cruise or, you know, other actors, but like, she was American royalty, and she did something. She made a difference. She wasn't just a good actor or a good actress. She was intelligent, spoke her mind, stood up for things. And
yeah, you're right.
And I'm fine with that being rewarded.
Right.
Like, let's take a couple moments.
Absolutely. And the fact that, and the reason why I wanted to spend so much time on this morning is because of exactly what you said when we came back from the poem. You weren't exposed to her, and it's not just about, oh man, you need to know, but it's amazing how, you know, you are obviously a smart person. We are sitting right next to each other. Our life paths have allowed us to cross at this moment. Yeah. Yet still, there are divisions in this nation that allow people to grow up without having exposure to others, you know what I mean, that would be more helpful if it existed. And so that very point alone speaks to why what she did was so important, because she did grow up in a South, the Jim Crow South, which is not the South you grew up in necessarily, but it is the same specific location. I just think that it's really important for people to understand that, yes, this woman was major, but there are people who still had no idea. Nope. You know, and that fact in itself is kind of amazing. When we come back on the other side of this break, we're going to get into a couple of other things that she's done, some different audio, more than just poems, some different things that she's gotten into, because again, Maya Angelou has passed, and she was, for my money, an American hero. So I'm Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist for the Washington Post. This is the Bill Press Show. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Don't look at me. Your hair's a bit frizzy today. Aww, you should pick that up. Oh, you're such a dork, loser. Here, let me help you with that. Oops.
Every day, kids witness bullying.
Oh, look, your crush is looking at you. Poor you.
They want to help, but don't know how.
See, no one here's gonna help you, because no one
Teach your
likes you.
kids how to be more than a bystander. Visit stopbullying.gov.
If you drive buzzed, it could cost you around $10,000. You'll face major legal fees, major fines, and steep insurance penalties. You could lose everything. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving.
When some people struggle with their mortgage payments, they become frozen, petrified. Not knowing what to do, they do nothing. But the people who take action are far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making home affordable is a free government program. Call now to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about the options that are right for you. Real help, real answers, right now.
Here at the GED Pep Talk Center, we have pep talkers standing by to get you motivated for your GED diploma. Text the name Terry to 69222 for a sympathetic pep talk.
You show people what you really are.
Or for a gentle pep talk, text the name Deborah.
You know you're going to make people very proud of you.
And if that's not enough, text the name Danny for an extreme pep talk.
Prove everyone wrong. Show them you're the boss.
Get your GED pep talk and find free GED classes. Text the name of the person you want a pep talk from to 69222.
Did you see the world differently? Did you celebrate the victory?
So today, I state clearly and with conviction America's commitment to seek the peace and security of a world without nuclear weapons.
Did you stand up against our greatest threat? Change the world.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the program. You're listening to The Bill Press Show. My name is Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist for the Washington Post. I'm joined by Peter Ogburn.
Hey.
We're talking about Maya Angelou, Dr. Maya Angelou, who was née Marguerite Ann Johnson, but her nom de plume, if you will, was probably a lot more famous to a lot of you. She passed yesterday at the age of 86, and her work is obviously quite impactful on American society. We're going to play a couple of clips from some things she's done over the years. But first, I want to read a couple of excerpts from a 1970 review from the Washington Post of her book, her first autobiography. I believe she wrote 6 over the course of her life, called I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. And in it, obviously, she's interviewed about what the book means and why she wrote it. Ms. Angelou says that she did not make the book a powerful statement about the courage and fortitude of black women. Quote, I've always told it from Marguerite's viewpoint, she says. I've never tried to editorialize much. If it's a good work, it's about black manhood and black womanhood. More than that, I've either said something about the human condition or nothing. I tell it through the black experience, of course, because that's my experience. But I don't like it narrowed down to just black womanhood or black manhood. I have a Jewish friend who's lived primarily in New York and Chicago, and she says the book took her back to her childhood. That's the kind of meaning I want the book to have. For most people, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings is their required reading for Maya Angelou. I believe I read it in probably around 6th or 7th grade because that's sort of where her memories sort of begin in the book from what I recall, or maybe they're a little earlier. But, the idea is that it ends when she's 18, and it's something you sort of need to ingest. That's the idea behind it being on the reading list. Before, you're 18. But you said you had a story that you came across that blew you away.
This blew me away because in one of the obituaries I read that when she was 7 years old, she was raped by her mother's boyfriend. And she spoke out about it, and they went to trial, and she testified against him. And an angry mob got a hold of that man and beat him to death. And at the age of 7 years old, Maya Angelou had the thought process that her words caused death. And she didn't speak for 5 whole years. She didn't speak. She did not talk because she was afraid that if she spoke and said something, bad things would happen. Now, it's obviously there's some kid logic involved in there, but that is an awake thought to have.
It really is. No, I mean, and you just think about how sort of the American mind works. And speaking specifically to your point, the notion of what a young black woman thought in itself was not something that was given much credence in this country before, people like her were popularized. I mean, there's obviously been a lot of voices over the years. You talk about your Joel Neal Hurstons and the like, but Maya Angelou for this era really says something, especially from, the Jim Crow era that we talked about. We got a phone call here. Pat in Beloit, Wisconsin. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. You were talking about exactly what I called about because that was my first exposure to her. Was I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and I think in light of what you were talking about earlier today about men and their right of privilege, their right of taking advantage of a woman, I think that shows we have not moved a long ways away. Yes, the crowd beat the man, but the man had attitude toward women.
Yeah.
If it was a child. And so, that is one of the greatest things I love about her, although I like anything she did, is her ability to put that into something that women could understand, that there was such pain and such hurt in these kind of experiences.
Thank you very much for the call, Pat. 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. We're talking about the legacy of Dr. Maya Angelou, and that's something that Pat just brought up as well, that it's tough for us to speak about as men. But, the fact that she was able to humanize what was the female experience in literature, I think, is something that a lot of people just don't necessarily understand or have an appreciation for if you're coming from the male point of view on that.
Yeah, and like, I get it. I know that she speaks to the female experience. I know that she speaks to the black experience. Mm-hmm. But me, as a white man, when I read what she did, that speaks to the human experience of what you can do, anybody. And I know it was especially tough being a black woman, but what you can do with your life.
Yeah.
Like, if you really want to get something done, you could get something done. And I read she once said that what she wanted on her tombstone was, quote, "I did my best. I hope you do the same."
Yeah, that's really what
that's heavy.
I'm going to read one last thing from this 1970 review of I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. When she was asked about the women's liberation movement in 1970, she said, "I think it's positive. I think it's part of the social upheaval of our time. The woman is the butt of the nation's sneer, and the black is the butt of the nation's joke. Black women feel the joke and the sneer. Black women don't work in the women's liberation movement because they first need to free themselves as black. I empathize with the women's liberation movement, but I'm also black." Maya Angelou, heck of a person. When we get back, we'll finally get to that audio. But again, rest in peace to her. And rest in power, as she would say. I'm Clinton Yates. This is The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
This is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing down, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the program. My name is Clinton Yates. I am a columnist for the Washington Post. Thank you all for tuning in to the Bill Press Show. On the line, we have with us Yesha Callahan, who is a staff writer and editor for The Root. We're obviously talking about the life and legacy of Dr. Maya Angelou. Yesha, how are you this morning?
I'm good. Yourself?
I'm well. So I guess I'll just start most basically. What was your reaction and what were your thoughts when you heard about the news?
When I first heard about it, I thought it was a hoax, because they're always, my colleague sent me an IM,
And I went to Wikipedia, and, nothing was updated. So then I checked the social media, and I saw everyone tweeting about it. So I was pretty shocked at first, but then I did realize that she was ill for a while. So after the initial shock, I just kind of felt glad that she was in a better place and not having to deal with her illnesses anymore.
How did her work speak to you as a woman first, a black woman in addition? I won't rank those in terms of importance because there's no real way for me to know that. That's not really necessarily even pertinent. But how do you feel about her work as far as how it affected you and who you are?
I think in general, as a woman, I read my first Maya Angelou book when I wasn't even a woman. I was 10 years old. And I saw the book on my mother's dresser. She had it for years. It was I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. And so I didn't know it was something that I should read or not, but I read it anyway. And, from that point on, it just taught me a lot of things about life, things that I hadn't even experienced or realized that I would somewhat end up experiencing myself. Adversity and learning how to be resilient and just dealing with the obstacles that are presented to you. So from the time I was 10 up until my adulthood now, I still read it constantly. It's like my Bible, per se. How did you think that you process what she meant and what her work said to you now versus, how has that evolution gone if you are so frequently reading it? That's actually fascinating to me, to know that you keep returning to it. What do you continue to learn? It's not necessarily continuing to learn, but for inspiration. So, whenever I feel down or whenever I'm going through things, I read that book because it just, it inspires me. Everything that she's gone through in her life, she was abused, she was raped, she's been everything from a trolley conductor to a poet. There's not too many people who can say that they've accomplished what she has in her life, even with those obstacles that she had. Part of what I think a lot of people respect most about Maya Angelou is that there's a part of her in some facet that she is able to project that everybody can relate to. What specifically for you do you think was what connected you to her the most? I think her story, being raised in the South, I wasn't raised in the South, but my grandmother was. Mm-hmm. And hearing her stories and my grandmother's stories, she related to me in a way that, I knew that these issues that my grandmother dealt with as growing up, someone else dealt with them also. So, my grandmother had never heard of Maya Angelou or even read her when I was younger. So I introduced her to my grandmother, because she wasn't educated and, there were a lot of things that she didn't know. So I introduced her to my grandmother just so my grandmother could realize, she wasn't the only person who went through these things as a child. I said earlier in the program that when I was a kid, part of the biggest impact she had on me was just that she was, as a black woman, respected across the board no matter what. And there were not a lot of people, if any, like that existed in my sphere of understanding at all. What do you, I'm not necessarily asking you to agree with that. I'm just wondering sort of, on a larger level, what did she really mean? Sorry, go ahead. She's held to a high regard, by black women, white women. It's her appeal, although, she speaks to black women, her appeal is universal. So, everyone has adversities in life. And so I see her as someone who, she just isn't speaking to just one specific group. So everyone can relate to her. Yesha, you're a parent, am I wrong? Yes, I am. How do you find a way to, instill some of the things you've learned from Maya or whomever? How do you find a way to try to channel that because they won't be around to see as much of her as you got to? My son is 15, so, he's in those teenage stages, and I try to teach him things about life in general, and, not always the good things about life. And so he's not really interested in me teaching those things right now because he thinks, I'm the pessimist. He's the optimist. And so he sees the good in everything. And I try to, teach him these lessons so life won't have to teach them to him. But, we're at the point now where, he wants to learn these things on his own. And so he's read, books by Maya Angelou. He's read everything from Maya Angelou to Ralph Ellison. So he knows that, there are certain things in the world that just, aren't nice, so to speak. But I try to teach as much as I can, but, so the world won't have to teach it to him. And, once that happens, and I want him to stay optimistic, but that may not be a reality.
Wow. Well, not to get too personal about this, but with a 15-year-old boy in a world in which feminism is very in which it is now at a lot more of the forefront of the discussion in terms of what we discuss in society, as well as Maya's role in that. I got to imagine that's a relatively tough position to navigate at that point for you.
There's certain things that I discuss with him. We don't necessarily discuss feminism. We discuss, how you treat people the way you want to be treated.
Yeah.
So, you have to treat people equally. That's the basis that I'm teaching him now. And of course, as him being a teenage boy, respect women, but also respect your fellow man as well.
Yeah.
So, I haven't delved into the whole feminism issues with him as of yet.
Okay. Well, Yesha, I just want to ask you one last thing. What are your, what are your thoughts going forward about the legacy that people really should remember beyond sort of the obvious?
She persevered. So her legacy is going to live on for lifetimes. Although she's gone, her legacy is of perseverance and fortitude. So I just think that people will be talking about her, for lifetime. My grandchildren will know who she is. Their children will know who she is. So just because she's left us physically doesn't mean that, her memory won't live on.
Yesha Callahan, she is of The Root. You can follow her on Twitter at YeshaCallahan. Thank you very much, Yesha.
Thank you.
All right. I'm Clinton Yates. This is the Bill Press Show. Again, we're talking about the life and legacy of Dr. Maya Angelou. When we get back, she was more than just a poet. She'd show up on screen every once in a while. She liked to talk to Oprah. And beyond that, she was funny. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
A single ember that escapes from a wildfire can travel more than a mile. That single ember can ignite and destroy your home or even your community. You can't control where that ember will land, only what happens when it does. Get Fire Adapted now at fireadapted.org.
Columbine, Virginia Tech,
Tucson,
Aurora,
Fort Hood, Oak Creek,
Newtown.
Newtown,
Newtown.
Newtown.
How many more?
How many more? How many more colleges? How many more classrooms?
How many more movie theaters?
How many more houses of faith?
How many more shopping malls?
How many more street corners?
How many more?
How many more?
Enough.
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 Demand a plan.
Right now. As a mom.
As a dad. As a friend. As a husband.
As a wife.
As an American.
As an American.
As an American.
As a human being.
For the children of Sandy Hook.
Demand a plan. No more lists of names. It's not too soon.
It's too late.
Now is the time.
Before we all know someone who loved someone on that list.
No more lists.
No more.
Who they might have been. No more.
If we had just done something yesterday.
It's time.
We can do better than this.
We can do better than this.
It's time.
It's time.
It's time for our leaders to act.
Demand a plan. Right now.
Right now.
You! Demand it!
Enough.
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 None of us would want to be told we can't marry the person we love. As Americans, we believe in freedom. That's what I fought for as a Marine, and that's what we believe in as Republicans. Freedom means freedom for everyone. I didn't used to understand the importance of same-sex marriage, but after learning my brother was gay, I wanted the same rights for him. He was the best man at my wedding, and I want to be the best man at his. It's only fair that Calvin should have the freedom to marry the person he loves, too.
It's time for marriage.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the program. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in for Bill Press here on the Bill Press Show. I am a columnist for the Washington Post. I'm joined by Peter Ogburn.
Hey.
And we're discussing the life and legacy of Maya Angelou, who passed yesterday at the age of 86. Obviously an American icon, a literary legend, amongst many other things. But she wasn't just a poet. You know, she was a personality that was beyond outsized. You know, you'd see her popping up on TV, and every time she showed up, Peter used the word American royalty, people treated her as a queen, and it was a rarity and a pleasure every single time. And she befriended Oprah eventually, you know, and they have sort of their own personal history. But, you know, there's a couple things I want to hear because, and this is sort of not an aside, but I always want to make this point. At this stage, the sound of her voice alone is part of her legacy. When you hear her, you know who it is. You know what I'm saying? Don't try to front. You hear that voice, fam, that's Maya. All right, forget about it. So we're going to talk about, the first clip we're going to play is something that she talks about with Oprah from 2013.
I think I was in my early 20s.
If that. Really?
Yes.
Yes. But when you said, Dr. Andrew, I said, no, I'm afraid I can't really. I thank you, but I'm going to be speaking. You said, if you'll give me 5 minutes, I promise you I will only spend 5 minutes. So I said, all right, because of your persistence. And you had good questions. You listened to my answers, and you had another good question. And then you said, thank you so much, Dr. Angelou. I appreciate it, and goodbye. And I looked at my watch. It was exactly 5 minutes. I asked you, what did you say your name was? What did you say? Tell me your first name again.
Yes, you literally said, in my memory, you said, who are you, girl?
That's
who are you, girl?
That's right.
I love that clip because it points out, yeah, she turned down Oprah and said, how about no?
Yeah.
You know, and
not right now.
Oprah. And humbled her, and it taught her something about who she is. And by the way, that voice you hear, that's not some put on accent. That is what we like to call a global lilt. When you literally speak a bunch of languages and you find yourself speaking to peoples in all walks of life, no, you don't just sound like you necessarily came from one place. You know, that's why it sounds the way that she does. There's another one with Oprah, also from 2013, when she talked about forgiveness.
Forgiveness is the greatest gift you can give yourself. It's not for the other person.
What do you think about that?
I mean, talk about an enlightened worldview.
Yeah.
From a woman who came from where she came from and saw what she saw. I mean, yeah. I mean, to have that type of presence of mind.
You said you've been reading around to different obituaries.
Yeah, I read a bunch of them.
Yeah.
And I just came across one. That I gotta say I didn't exactly expect to read the way that I read this. RedState.com,
right?
Very conservative website, best known to have Eric Erickson.
I have a feeling I know where this is going.
Their commentator, very conservative guy. He said the title of his piece is "The Caged Bird Sang to Me," and just to pull out one quick paragraph, he says, "I'm pretty sure Maya Angelou and I would disagree on much politically, but I would still stand on a bed of hot coals to hear her tell me that we disagreed."
Wow.
I didn't expect that from Eric Erickson.
That says a lot. No, wow. Okay. And there's one thing I want to get to as well, which is a clip from the Richard Pryor show where this is part of a sketch, and the sketch is about a man named Willie. And Willie is an alcoholic, and Maya Angelou plays his wife. It's about a minute long, but I want to tell you why this was important for when it happened.
You had a nice time at the party? I know the bartender had a good time. Oh. He loves you too, I bet, Willie. He loves you as much as the landlord loves you, the telephone company, and the corner grocery man. Oh, they don't understand you, huh? They don't appreciate your generosity. Well, they don't know how you balance the economy, Willie. No bar in a radius of 2 square miles can go broke because you spread your money around fairly. Of course, you spread yourself around, too. But who suffers? Me? Don't worry about me, Willie. I get along. I get to sit here and talk to you intimately like this every night.
Now, those are sort of the comedic parts about that soliloquy. But remember, this show happened in 1977. And what it was a very strong social commentary about what was happening in the black family in America right then. The clip, if you see it, it's a darkened room. He is sleeping on the couch. And what she goes on to talk about in that is how no matter how much he may not value himself, no matter how many times he goes to the welcome wagon and asks for food and asks for a job and gets rejected, she points out that she will be there for him and how much she stands behind him even when society calls him the N-word. He calls himself the N-word. Society is downtrodden on him. It is a very specific look at how I think a lot of black women probably felt at that point, which is that it is not necessarily an option to ditch a guy because he's got a substance abuse problem, and that the value of the family unit is important. And the scene ends with her saying, I don't care how many times you come home and you pass out, you're still mine and you're still here. And that matters more than anything. And that, listen, that sketch is no joke. Like,
right.
It's funny because you laugh on certain levels. Not you, but I mean, one laughs on certain levels. But it speaks a lot to what the very specific mindset was of a lot of people in this country right then. And it is, I mean, in retrospect, you look at it, it is actually supremely powerful. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I watched it again for the first time in a while yesterday, and it was a very moving thing. I want to get to one last thing that she said, which was a talk with her mom from 2013 on ABC This Week.
She said, baby, wait a minute. I think you're the greatest woman I've ever met. And I thought, suppose she's right. Suppose I'm going to be somebody.
I'm not going to argue with her.
Man.
Tough to say. Listen, that's all I've got to say about it. Maya Angelou was a great woman, obviously a great person, an incredible writer. You know, she's dead at 86, and I think that her legacy will live on probably well beyond the rest of our years, and that's a good thing. Listen, when we get back, we're going to wrap things up. I'm Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist for the Washington Post. Peter Ogburn's here with me. This is The Bill Press Show. We'll be right back.
This is The Bill Press Show.
So this is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing down, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
All right, folks, closing up the shop right now. I'm Clinton Yates, columnist for the Washington Post. If I don't slam myself in this microphone because I can't keep it together. Getting ready to be done here, but
update.
Breaking news.
Update. I have an update on a story I did earlier about how LeVar Burton started a Kickstarter to bring the next generation of Reading Rainbow to the web and to classrooms. He has now raised $1.5 million in less than 24 hours.
Just like that.
Talk about tapping into some nostalgia.
Can do anything.
Yeah.
Take a look. It's in a book.
He said now at this point, the more people that donate, he has enough to fund the project.
Right.
So the more people, he's still taking donations. The more people that donate, the more classrooms will get it. So if you
there's reason to keep giving.
There's reason to keep giving. It's not like he's hit his ceiling and then he's done.
Right.
The more you give, the more classrooms will be able to see the new project. So keep on.
LeVar, fighting the good fight.
Yeah, man.
Loved me some Reading Rainbow.
Hell yeah.
I used to be so jealous of the kids that got to talk about the books. And I'd be like, how do you get to do that? What is that about? You know what I mean? Like, who is that kid and why does he get to read that book? I was like, I have books. I'm smart. What about me, LeVar? What about me? There could be a whole spin-off sideshow that would be kids wanting to read, like adults reading books they wanted to read as a kid.
Finally
on the
living
show.
that dream.
Finally getting the chance on YouTube. I just realized that I have some issues to work out.
Yeah, that was real.
So,
that was real.
Today's show, we reviewed a lot of things. We talked about Edward Snowden. We talked about John Kerry acting like he's a member of the WWE and whether or not Snowden is a hero or a heel. Deduced that he's probably somewhere in between. We also talked about gentlemen. Control yourselves, and not just control yourselves, do it for the right reasons, which is because it is a matter of human respect to treat women as well as you treat yourself. That goes for parents, teaching your kids that, so on and so forth. We also talked about the long life and legacy of Dr. Maya Angelou. And I will read this, the quote most people probably remember for her most. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Bingo. That's Dr. Maya Angelou. I'm Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist for the Washington Post. This is The Bill Press Show. It's Thursday. It's time for us to go. Thanks again, everybody. Peace.
This is The Bill Press Show.